Tonight, we're stepping into a world where the impossible feels completely natural. A small town where the extraordinary happens as gently as rain. Welcome to Macondo. You don't need to memorize anything tonight. Just let yourself drift into this story. If you recognize the name, wonderful. If not, you're about to discover something truly magical. This is the story of a family across 100 years. A family trapped in cycles of solitude, even when surrounded by love. A tale about how we're all repeating patterns we don't understand. Before we begin, take a moment to release the day. Breathe deeply. Feel your shoulders relax. You're safe here in this story, even as strange things begin to happen. If this journey finds you well, if this piece settles into you tonight, consider subscribing, so I can prepare your next dream, your next escape into worlds stranger and more beautiful than our own. We're traveling now, moving backward in time. Imagine we're crossing from your bedroom, through darkness, into a different world entirely. A tropical breeze touches your skin. The air grows warmer, you smell earth and growing things. Flowers you've never seen before. The sounds of birds calling in languages you don't quite understand, but somehow feel. The ground beneath your feet becomes soft and red. Adobe houses begin appearing through the vegetation. Smoke rises from chimneys. You've arrived. Welcome to Macondo, a town founded on magic and memory. They say Macondo was founded by José Arcadio Buendía and his wife Drusilla when they were young, fleeing from terrible memories and darker things. They came here seeking a place to start fresh. But Macondo wasn't a normal town. Even from the beginning, it existed outside normal time. Magic wasn't something that happened here. Magic was simply how things worked, how life happened. The Buendía house stood in the center, expanding and spiraling as the family grew. Rooms connecting to other rooms. Hallways leading nowhere. A physical representation of their own endless confusion and complexity. José Arcadio Buendía was a man obsessed. Obsessed with invention, with understanding, with discovering the hidden mechanisms of the world. He built things that shouldn't work. And somehow they did. One day, he became convinced that the Earth itself was moving. That they lived on a planet spinning through space. Everyone else thought he was mad. Perhaps he was. Perhaps he was right. Drusilla watched her husband disappear into his obsessions. She raised their children. She built the actual life of the family while he chased impossible dreams. She was the real foundation of Macondo. They had 3 children. 3 boys who would shape everything that followed. José Arcadio, the eldest, beautiful and immense. Aureliano, quiet and intelligent. And a 3rd son who came later, darker and stranger than both. José Arcadio II was different from his twin brother Aureliano. Where Aureliano sought to build and create, José Arcadio became obsessed with their mother's memories, trying to preserve everything that was disappearing. But we're getting ahead. Let's go back further. Back to the very beginning, when Macondo was barely born. When José Arcadio and Drusilla first arrived with nothing but hope and terrible secrets. They fled from a village where something terrible had happened. Something involving blood and honor and pride. José Arcadio had killed a man in what people said was a duel, though nobody quite agreed on the details. The dead man's ghost haunted José Arcadio for a time. Or he believed it did. In Macondo, believing something was true often made it true. The ghost disappeared eventually, but the guilt never quite left. Drusilla knew about this guilt. She carried it with him, silently, year after year. Their relationship was built on this shared burden. They loved each other. But they were also trapped together by what they couldn't escape. They built Macondo to be a place where they could start fresh. But what you build never quite escapes what you bring to it. The town inherited their solitude. It became Macondo's defining characteristic. In those early days, the town seemed blessed. The river ran pure and clear. The soil was incredibly fertile. Fruits grew wild. Everything anyone needed simply appeared, as if magic was arranging it. But fertility brings danger in its own way. Things grow too fast here, they consume spaces. They tangle and intertwine until you can't tell where one plant ends and another begins. Rather like the family itself. José Arcadio the elder, the firstborn son, was extraordinarily beautiful, so tall that he had to duck through doorways, so strong that he could lift a horse, and completely, totally innocent in his strength. Because he was so beautiful, and because he was a man and Macondo was isolated, it was inevitable that he would fall in love. Her name was Pilar Ternera, who lived on the edge of town. Pilar was older than José Arcadio. She'd already lived a whole life. She'd been a prostitute, she'd had lovers, she'd survived things. Yet when she saw this innocent giant, something awakened in her. Something tender and true. They became lovers, which was not acceptable in Macondo. José Arcadio Buendia, his father, was furious. So José Arcadio decided to do something drastic. He decided to build a boat inland, 50 kilometers from the sea. No one could quite explain why he wanted to build a boat so far from water. Some people said it was a metaphor for escape. Others said he was mad. Perhaps both were true. Love makes us do impossible things. Before he could finish, before love could carry him away on that impossible boat, something happened. Something he didn't foresee. Something that would mark the beginning of the Buendia family's curse. If curse is even the right word. A woman named Remedios arrived in Macondo. Remedios. Just her name seems to contain magic. She was so beautiful that her presence alone made men lose their reason. She was almost not of this world at all. She was José Arcadio's cousin. And she was so achingly beautiful, so perfect, so removed from normal existence, that he became obsessed. His love for Pilar suddenly seemed ordinary. Manageable, easy to forget. This is how the Buendia family's pattern begins. Love leads to betrayal. Betrayal leads to tragedy. Tragedy leads to solitude. And solitude leads back to love, which will betray again. The cycle never breaks. José Arcadio abandoned his boat. He abandoned Pilar. He chased Remedios, who seemed to welcome his attention the way a flower welcomes rain. Inevitable. Natural, without real choice on either side. They married. José Arcadio and Remedios. They had children. They seemed happy, though happiness in Macondo was always tinged with strangeness. They seemed to understand each other perfectly, even though both were quite mad in their own ways. And this is where we've arrived. At the beginning of everything. Tomorrow we'll meet Aureliano, who was different from his brother in every possible way. But for now, rest, you're safe in Macondo. For now. Now let's talk about Aureliano, José Arcadio's younger brother. Where José Arcadio was beautiful and simple, Aureliano was brilliant and complicated. He felt everything too deeply. Aureliano was born with the ability to see things others couldn't. Not magic exactly. More like he could perceive the hidden patterns underneath reality. He understood how things work before anyone taught him. As a child, he taught himself to read. He taught himself to build things. He didn't ask for permission or instruction. He simply observed the world and understood it. This made him different. This made him dangerous. Aureliano fell in love with someone he shouldn't have. Her name was Remedios the Beautiful. His own cousin. The same woman his brother had just married, and she loved him too, or seemed to. Or perhaps she loved everyone equally. This love was impossible. Remedios was married to José Arcadio. Aureliano couldn't act on what he felt. So he did what brilliant, suffering people do. He transformed his pain into creation. He became a maker of beautiful things. He became a goldsmith. Or rather, something more than a goldsmith. He created things so beautiful that people said his hands were blessed by spirits. Each piece contained longing, sadness, and a kind of terrible perfection. He would spend entire nights creating tiny golden fishes. Beautiful fish that served no purpose except to be beautiful. He would create them and then he would dismantle them. Create and destroy. Create and destroy. A cycle like the family itself. He created a flock of nearly 2,000 tiny golden fishes. Each one perfect, each one unique in subtle ways. He created them over years, pouring his impossible love into each delicate piece. People began to notice Aureliano. Despite his solitude, despite his private suffering, his work made him famous throughout the region. They called him the greatest craftsman of the age. Some called him mad. Both were true. But Aureliano was experiencing something darker underneath this success. A kind of obsessive madness. He became convinced that he could understand the world through creation. That if he could make something perfect enough, reality would make sense. This is when he fell into alchemy. The same obsession that had consumed his father José Arcadio. As if obsession itself was hereditary. As if the family couldn't escape this pull toward the impossible and unknowable. He tried to turn base metal into gold. He tried to decode hidden messages in ordinary objects. He tried to understand the true names of things. Convinced that knowing a thing's true name would give him power over it. Remedios watched him descend into this madness. She felt responsible, though it wasn't her fault. In Macondo, women often felt responsible for men's destruction. They absorbed the blame even when they'd done nothing but exist beautifully. And then something happened that shifted everything. Something that would define the next 100 years. Aurelio José appeared in Macondo. Not Aurelio José, Aureliano José, a name that seems almost designed to cause confusion. Aurelio José was a man, a soldier, a visitor. Some say he was sent, others say he arrived by accident. But in Macondo, accidents and destiny were often the same thing. He came with a message, or perhaps a curse. He claimed to be carrying a message from someone's past, someone's other life. Before Macondo. Before everyone had arranged themselves into their current positions of love and betrayal. He was searching for someone named Pilar Ternera, the woman who had been José Arcadio's lover, the woman he had abandoned to pursue Remedios, the woman who was waiting at the edge of town, remembering what had been lost. When Aurelio José found Pilar and delivered his message, everything changed. The message contained something she had been waiting for. Permission, perhaps, or a final goodbye, or confirmation that the past was truly dead and could not return. Pilar took Aurelio José as her lover. Not from love exactly, but from necessity. From a need to mark that a chapter had ended. To move forward by taking something new into her life, even if only temporarily. Aurelio José stayed in Macondo longer than he'd planned. Days became weeks, became months. He discovered he didn't want to leave. He discovered he wanted to stay with Pilar. To build something with her, however temporary it might be. But nothing stays permanent in Macondo. Or perhaps everything does, and that's the real curse. Aurelio José received orders. He had to leave. He was a soldier. He had duties in another region. He had to go. He asked Pilar to come with him. He asked her to leave Macondo, to leave her past, to start fresh somewhere else. It was a kind offer. A loving offer, and Pilar had to refuse it. She couldn't leave Macondo. Even though Macondo had hurt her. Even though staying meant returning to solitude. She couldn't leave because something in her knew she was needed here. That her presence mattered. That she was home. When Aurelio José left, something in Pilar broke. Or something in her healed. It's hard to know which. She threw herself into her work as a fortune teller. As a keeper of memories. As a witness to other people's suffering. She became the person people came to when they needed to understand their own stories. When they needed help seeing the patterns they were trapped in. When they needed someone to confirm that yes, this was really happening. That they weren't imagining it. Now let's return to Aureliano. While all of this was happening with Aurelio José and Pilar, Aureliano was still in his workshop. Still creating and destroying his golden fishes. Still descending into obsession and alchemy. One day, Aureliano looked up from his work and realized that years had passed. That Remedios had given birth to children. That his life had become something other than what he'd planned. And he didn't know how to feel about this. He decided something that day. He decided that he would stop waiting. He would stop longing for Remedios. He would stop trying to turn base metal into gold or understand the hidden mechanisms of reality. Instead, he would learn to fight. He would become a soldier. He would transform his brilliant mind into something violent and destructive. Because if you can't create meaning, perhaps you can create change through force. This decision would have consequences that neither Aureliano nor anyone else in Macondo could predict. But that's how the Buendia family worked. One person's choice became everyone's tragedy. One person's escape became another person's prison. Let's talk about the women now. Because while the men were building and fighting and creating, the women were building their own worlds. Worlds of endurance, memory, and quiet survival. Drusilla was the foundation. She held the family together through every crisis, every betrayal, every impossible circumstance. She was always working, always managing, always absorbing the chaos of living with brilliant, obsessed men. She never complained, which was perhaps her greatest failing. Because by not complaining, she never demanded better. By accepting everything, she enabled the cycle to continue. This is the burden women in Macondo carry. Amaranta was different from her mother. She inherited something from her father's obsessive nature. But instead of channeling it into creation or alchemy, she channeled it into revenge and memory. She kept score. She never forgot a slight. Amaranta was beautiful, but hers was a cold beauty. The kind that attracts people because they sense danger in it. Because they want to warm her. Because they think their love might redeem whatever darkness lives inside her. She took a lover once. A man named Pietro Crespi. He was a musician who came to Macondo and seemed kind, gentle, completely different from the Buendia men. Amaranta almost loved him, almost. But Amaranta couldn't let herself be happy. Something in her needed to suffer. So she played games with Pietro's affection. She led him on and then pulled away. She created pain where there had been only tenderness. When she finally broke his heart completely, when she finally made it clear that she would never truly love him, Pietro couldn't bear it. He couldn't imagine living in Macondo without her. So he stopped imagining. He stopped living. He hanged himself. Right there in Macondo. Right in the house where he'd played music that was meant to bring joy. And Amaranta never quite forgave herself. But she also never quite stopped hating him for leaving her alone. This is the pattern you see. Love leads to death. Connection leads to destruction. And the Buendia family, again and again, finds itself trapped in this pattern, unable to break free, unable to choose differently. Remedios the Beautiful was watching all of this. Watching her husband José Arcadio descend into simple contentment. Watching her lover Aureliano descend into obsession and violence. Watching Pietro die from Amaranta's coldness. And she was becoming increasingly aware that she didn't belong here. That she was from somewhere else. That this world of Macondo, for all its magic, was not her natural place. She was beginning to fade. There's a day that people in Macondo remember. A specific day when Remedios decided to fold laundry. Clean white sheets that had been washed in the river and dried in the sun. Perfectly ordinary laundry. She folded the sheets carefully, one by one, precise and methodical, and as she folded she began to rise, just slightly at first, then higher. Higher into the air, carried by the sheets themselves, or perhaps by something inside her that was finally letting go. She rose above the Buendia house, above Macondo itself, above the earth and into whatever comes after. And when she was gone, everyone realized something. She had never truly belonged to any of them. She belonged only to herself. Her ascension changed something in the town, not dramatically, but subtly, as if her removal acknowledged that some things cannot be contained, that some beauty is too perfect for this world. José Arcadio grieved, though gently. He had accepted her leaving with the same acceptance he'd accepted her presence. He was too simple to be complicated about loss. Aureliano didn't grieve at all. By the time Remedios disappeared, he was already gone. Already transformed into something else. Already becoming the man who would wage war on his own family. Now the stage was set for the violence that would come. Now the town was primed for the impossible wars. Now, without Remedios's perfect beauty to distract them, The men of Macondo were ready to turn their obsession outward. But before we reach the wars, before we reach the point where beauty and magic give way to violence and destruction, we need to understand one more person. One more character who will shape everything that follows. Her name is Pilar Ternera. But we've already met her, haven't we? She's the woman who loved José Arcadio. Who loved Aurelio José. Who is now the keeper of memories and fortunes in Macondo. Pilar is perhaps the only character in this novel who understands what's happening. Who sees the patterns. Who understands that the tragedy isn't coming. It's already here. It always has been. It's woven into the foundation of Macondo. She tries to warn people. But people never listen to warnings, especially not warnings from women. Warnings from women are dismissed as superstition or manipulation. So Pilar watches, and remembers, and documents everything in her own way. Pilar understands that the Buendia family is cursed. But not in the supernatural way that curses usually work. They're cursed by their inability to escape themselves. By their inability to learn from their own history. By their obsessive repetition. She knows that the wars are coming. That Aureliano will start wars that will last for years. That men will die for reasons they don't understand. That the violence will consume generations. And there's nothing she can do to stop it. This is Pilar's curse. Not magic. Not supernatural. But something perhaps more terrible. The curse of seeing clearly in a world designed for blindness. The curse of understanding in a world built on delusion. As our first section ends, let's remember these characters. These people who are about to descend into decades of violence and chaos. These people who are still, right now, capable of tenderness and love. José Arcadio with his innocent simplicity. Aureliano with his brilliant mind turning toward violence. Dorisula holding the family together through impossible circumstances. Amaranta with her cold, beautiful heart. Remedios ascending into transcendence. And Pilar watching everything with terrible understanding. These are the people who will carry the Buendia name forward. These are the people who will repeat the family's patterns. These are the people we're about to follow into decades of impossible violence and terrible solitude. But the violence hasn't started yet. Right now, in this moment, Macondo is still beautiful, still magical. The wars are still only a possibility in the future. Let's rest here for a moment. Let's breathe with these people before everything changes. Aureliano stands in his workshop one last time, looking at the golden fishes he created, understanding that each one represents something he'll never have, choosing to become a soldier instead of an artist. José Arcadio holds his son and doesn't understand that this child will bear the weight of family tragedy. That innocence cannot protect any of us from history or heredity. That love cannot save us from ourselves. Dorisula looks out at Macondo from the Buendia house and knows, without knowing exactly how she knows, that the time of peace is ending. That the pattern is about to accelerate. That everything from this point forward will hurt. Pilar shuffles her cards and sees the same impossible future. The same cycles of birth and death and resurrection. The same family repeating the same mistakes across generations. Amaranta begins her work on something that will take her entire life. Something made from banana cloth and embroidery. A burial shroud, though she doesn't yet know it. A piece of art that is also a preparation for death. Aurelio José Segundo is being born right now, or has just been born. A third-generation Buendia, carrying a name that echoes and repeats. Condemned from birth to repeat his ancestors' patterns and mistakes. And Macondo itself is shifting. The town that was founded on magic and memory is becoming something else. Something harder. Something more real. The golden age is ending. The practical age is beginning. People are arriving in Macondo now. People from outside. Bringing new ideas, new commerce, new violence. The isolation that protected the town is ending. The real world is creeping in. And Aureliano, in his workshop, is cleaning weapons instead of creating golden fishes. He's already gone. He's already left. He's already become something other than himself. The first wars haven't started yet, but they're inevitable. Everyone can feel them coming. It's in the air. It's in the tone of conversations. It's in the way people look at each other. Aureliano will fight the liberals. Or perhaps the conservatives. It hardly matters which. War in Macondo isn't about politics or ideology. It's about the family's internal need to destroy itself, to transform love into violence. He will wage war for decades. He will defeat armies. He will liberate towns. He will marry and father children. He will become a legend, and none of it will matter. None of it will heal anything. José Arcadio II will be born from Aureliano's liaison, and he'll become obsessed with history, determined to record everything accurately, convinced that he can preserve truth through documentation and memory. Arcadio will seize power in Macondo. He'll be even more brutal than his father Aureliano. He'll make terrible decisions based on absolute conviction. He'll be executed for his extremism, and no one will shed tears. And through all of this, Dorisula continues working, continues managing, continues absorbing the chaos. She ages rapidly from the stress. She becomes ancient, but she never stops caring for her family. Amaranta's embroidery project grows and grows. It will eventually become a burial shroud long enough to wrap her own body. She's creating the thing that will contain her death, creating it with her own hands, in advance. Pilar watches all of this unfold exactly as she predicted, exactly as the cards told her. She feels vindicated and helpless at the same time. Her prophecies are accurate, but accuracy doesn't change anything. The Buendia family expands and contracts like a living thing. Children are born. Some die. Some leave. Some return transformed. Names repeat and repeat. The same names appearing in each generation, like a curse wearing the clothes of heredity. The magical aspects of Macondo slowly fade, slowly replace themselves with something more ordinary. The town becomes real, which is to say, it becomes sad, becomes governed by rules and laws instead of magic and possibility. But in the hearts of the Buendia family, magic never truly dies. They still live as if they're in a magical realm. They still believe in impossible things. They still love with the intensity of mythical figures. And they still can't break free. Still can't choose differently. Still can't stop repeating the family's fundamental pattern. Love, betrayal, destruction. Love again. The cycle continues. Now you begin to understand why this book is called 100 Years of Solitude. It's not about 100 years of time passing. It's about 100 years of the same fundamental human isolation. Living with others, yet utterly alone. It's about the solitude of love that cannot be requited. The solitude of power that cannot be wielded meaningfully. The solitude of beauty that alienates rather than connects. The solitude of genius that finds no worthy peer. Each character in this family is ultimately alone. Even when surrounded by people. Even when loved intensely. Even when they love intensely back. The connections between them are real but insufficient. Never quite enough. This is what makes the Buendia family so profoundly human, and so profoundly tragic. They want connection. They seek it desperately. But they're trapped by their own natures, by their own obsessions, by the patterns they've inherited and cannot escape. We're reaching the end of the character section now. But before we move into the deeper story, the wars and destruction and strange magical events, let's acknowledge what we've learned about these people. They're not good or bad. They're not heroes or villains. They're human beings trying to navigate impossible circumstances with brilliant minds and broken hearts. They're us. They're all of us. They love too much. They destroy too much. They remember too much. They forget too much. They repeat what they've learned by watching others repeat it. They're trapped in amber, preserved in their own patterns. The second generation of Buendias will be born from the first generation's chaos. Third, fourth, fifth generations will follow, each one carrying the same names. Each one repeating the same mistakes. Each one believing they can be different. Each one failing to be. This is the truth that Pilar understood so clearly. Not that the future is fixed, but that without conscious choice to break patterns. Patterns perpetuate themselves. Without intentional disruption, the cycles continue. And the Bwendi has never quite achieved that conscious choice. Never quite managed that intentional disruption. They're always too caught up in living to step back and see the pattern. Always too busy being the tragedy to understand it, but we can see it. We, as observers, as listeners to this story, we can see what they cannot. We can perceive the pattern. We can understand the trap. And perhaps in understanding it, we can avoid it in our own lives. Or perhaps not. Perhaps the pattern is universal. Perhaps every family, every person, every human being is trapped in cycles that we can see in others but not in ourselves. Perhaps solitude is simply what it means to be human. This is why the Bwendi family is so beloved. Why people have read this book for decades and will continue reading it. Because in their specific magical tragedy, they're describing something universal. Something true about all of us. We recognize ourselves in José Arcadio's innocent trust. We recognize ourselves in Aureliano's brilliant obsession. We recognize ourselves in Drusula's endless endurance. We recognize ourselves in Amaranta's cold protection. We recognize ourselves in Pilar's helpless prophecy. We recognize ourselves in Remedios's transcendent otherworldliness. We recognize ourselves in Aurelio Jose's doomed love. We recognize ourselves in every failure, every loss, every desperate attempt at connection. And that recognition is both comforting and terrible. Comforting because it means we're not alone in our solitude. Our struggles are part of something larger, something shared. Terrible because it means we might be trapped too. We might be repeating patterns too. But for now, as we move into the story itself, let's hold on to the comfort. Let's acknowledge that we're witnessing something true about human experience. Something that has mattered enough to be written down and preserved and transmitted across time. The Bwendi family is calling us deeper now. The wars are about to begin. The magical moments are about to increase. The cycles are about to accelerate. Get comfortable. We're about to descend into the heart of Macondo. You're safe here, even as we encounter violence and death and impossible magic. You're safe because this is a story that has already been told, already survived, already proven its truth across decades and generations. Let yourself drift deeper. Let the names begin to repeat. Let the magical and mundane mix together until you can't distinguish them. You're entering the real Macondo now, the place where the story truly happens. José Arcadio will build his boat, Aureliano will create his fishes, Remedios will ascend, deaths will happen, wars will rage. Children will inherit impossible burdens. And through it all Macondo will remain. Strange, beautiful, terrible, and utterly real. You're listening to a story about magic realism, which is to say, a story about the magic of reality itself. The incredible strangeness that exists within normal human life. The impossible things that happen every day. The way love transforms us completely. The way loss destroys us. The way memory builds universes inside us. The way grief persists. The way obsession consumes. The way beauty transcends. These are the magical things happening in Macondo. Gabriel García Márquez didn't invent magic realism, but he perfected it. He took the patterns of Latin American life, with its blend of indigenous magic, colonial history, and contemporary reality, and transformed them into something mythical. He took the Bwendi family and made them eternal. Made them mythical. Made them matter not because they're heroes, but because they're human. Because they struggle with the same fundamental questions that all of us struggle with. Now let's move into the story. Now let's watch these characters live their lives. Now let's see how the family grows and fragments. Now let's witness 100 years of solitude, condensed into something you can listen to before sleep. The wars will seem long, but they'll pass. The deaths will seem tragic, but they'll recur. The love will seem redemptive, but it'll betray. The solitude will seem unbearable, but it'll endure. Welcome to Macondo. Welcome to 100 years. Rest now. We're pausing before the action begins, before the intensity increases, before the cycles accelerate. Rest with Macondo in this moment of equilibrium, before everything changes forever. Breathe deeply. You're safe. The story will unfold at its own pace. You don't need to chase it. You don't need to understand it all at once. You just need to let yourself drift with it, deeper and deeper into Macondo. The Buendia family is waiting for us. Macondo is waiting. The story is waiting. And you're almost ready to hear it. Almost ready to descend into 100 years of solitude and magic and terrible, beautiful human experience. Aureliano is picking up weapons instead of creating. Jose Arcadio is about to become a father. Jerusalem is about to discover her son's true nature. Amaranta is about to begin her life's work. Everything is about to begin. The wars haven't started yet, but violence is already in the air, already in people's hearts, already in the decisions being made in darkness when no one's watching. And Pilar, in her candlelit room, shuffles her cards one more time. She knows what's coming. She's always known. But knowing doesn't change anything. The story must play out. The patterns must repeat. The cycles must continue. We're at the threshold now. The character section is ending. The story section is about to begin. The magic is about to intensify. The tragedy is about to deepen. Are you ready? Are you prepared to go deeper into Macondo? Then let's begin. Let's move into the wars, into the obsessions, into the love and betrayal and death and resurrection that will characterize the next phase of Macondo's history. Aureliano stands at the window of the workshop, looking out at Macondo one last time before he becomes a soldier, before he becomes a revolutionary, before he becomes a legend that will outlive him by centuries. Jose Arcadio walks through the town distributing handbills about his insurrection, not yet realizing that his insurrection will consume decades, not yet knowing that his wars will define entire generations, not yet understanding the scope of his own ambition. This is the moment before, the moment of preparation, the moment of gathering force before unleashing, and we, listening safely from our beds, from our darkness, from our own solitude, we're about to witness what happens when brilliant, obsessed men decide to change the world. Aureliano rides out from Macondo at the head of his first army. 32 armed men. That's all it takes to begin a war that will consume 3 decades. 32 people who believe that violence can change something. He will win battle after battle. He will liberate towns that don't want to be liberated. He will defeat enemies who eventually become his brothers, in arms. He will transform from a craftsman into a legend called the Conal. He will father 17 sons, each one born from a different woman, each one carrying Aureliano's name in some form. And each one will carry the family curse into new territory, spreading the solitude like a contagion. 17 little Aurelianos running through different towns. 17 variations on the same brilliant obsessive mind. 17 repetitions of the same fundamental loneliness. Each one convinced he's unique. Each one living the same life their father lived. Back in Macondo, Drusilla ages rapidly. She watches her son become a legend and understands that legend is just another word for someone who's abandoned his family. She understands that his victories are her defeats. Jose Arcadio doesn't understand the wars. He doesn't understand why his brother is fighting. He doesn't understand why violence has become the family's language. He remains simple, innocent, confused by everything. But Jose Arcadio becomes important anyway. His size, his strength, his very presence inspires people. He's made a magistrate. He's given authority he never wanted. And his simple nature is interpreted as profound wisdom. Amaranta works on her embroidery. Year after year, the funeral shroud growing longer and longer. Every stitch made with absolute precision. Every thread chosen with care. She's creating a masterpiece. And she's creating her own tomb. She becomes a kind of priestess of memory, recording births and deaths and marriages, writing everything down, making sure that the family's history is preserved even as it repeats itself endlessly. Pilar's prophecies continue to come true, not dramatically, but inexorably. She warned about war. War comes. She warned about the death of innocence. Innocence dies. She warned about the spread of solitude. Solitude spreads like fire through the family. The wars rage on, liberals against conservatives. Or sometimes the battle lines shift. Sometimes Aureliano fights for different ideologies. Sometimes the reasons for fighting change, but the fighting itself continues. 32 wars. That's how many times Aureliano takes up arms. 32 insurrections. 32 attempts to transform society through force. 32 failures that keep him searching for what violence couldn't accomplish. But he's invincible in battle. Somehow, against all odds, Aureliano the Conal cannot be defeated militarily. He defeats every army sent against him. His enemies can't kill him. Only time can kill him. Only age and obsession and sorrow. The government offers him treaties. Twice he accepts. Twice he believes that peace is possible. Twice the treaties fail. Twice he returns to war. Each return is more bitter than the last. Each return kills something inside him. Between wars, Aureliano becomes a goldsmith again. Or almost. He creates things, but they're different now. They're not beautiful creatures anymore. They're weapons, designed to kill. Made with the same precision he once used for art. José Arcadio II is born during this period. Second generation José Arcadio. The name itself is a curse. He inherits his father Aureliano's brilliant mind and his uncle José Arcadio's physical power. He has no chance. José Arcadio II becomes obsessed with history, with recording, with understanding patterns. He wants to decode the Buendia family's history, the way Aureliano wanted to decode the secrets of creation through alchemy. He discovers a manuscript, an old manuscript written in a strange language, a text that seems to contain the entire history of Macondo, and he becomes convinced that if he can decode it, he'll understand everything. The manuscript is encoded. Each letter replaced by the next letter in the alphabet, a simple cipher, but José Arcadio becomes obsessed with breaking it, with understanding what ancient wisdom it contains. It becomes his entire life's work. Meanwhile, Arcadio seizes power in Macondo, Aureliano's adopted son, or perhaps his biological son. The genealogy becomes unclear in Macondo. He's young, fierce, absolutely convinced of his own righteousness. He makes terrible decisions. He orders executions. He confiscates property. He transforms Macondo from a magical town into a military garrison. He believes he's establishing order. He's actually establishing the conditions for his own downfall. Aureliano eventually defeats Arcadio militarily, but defeating your own son in war is a particular kind of destruction. Aureliano wins but loses something he can never recover. He executes Arcadio, and the colonel becomes even emptier than before. Arcadio faces his execution with defiance. He doesn't beg for mercy. He doesn't acknowledge his father. He accepts his death as the inevitable result of his choices. And in that acceptance, he achieves a kind of dignity. His death marks something. A point beyond which nothing can be the same. The wars continue, but they're different now. They're infected with this familial death. Every subsequent battle is shadowed by this particular tragedy. A woman named Petra Coates becomes Aureliano's lover. She's a prostitute. She's pragmatic. She's not looking for love. She's looking for someone to take care of her. And Aureliano, despite his fame and legend, is looking for someone to take care of him. They live together for a time, they have children together. They create something like a family. But Aureliano can't stay. His wars call him back. His obsession with changing society through violence demands his attention. And Petra is left alone again. This is the pattern with Aureliano. Over and over, he finds someone, he creates something, he leaves, he returns, he leaves again. And slowly, the people in his life become echoes, become shadows, become memory. One day, a woman appears in Macondo. Her name is Pilar Ternera, though everyone knows her by reputation long before they meet her in person. She's the woman who keeps the town's memories. The woman who knows everyone's future. No one is quite sure how old Pilar is. She's been alive longer than seems possible. She's survived Aurelio José. She's survived Aureliano. She's survived decades of chaos. And she continues growing older but never dying, watching and remembering. Pilar becomes Aureliano's confidante, perhaps his closest friend. She's the only person who doesn't ask him to be anything other than what he is. She accepts his violence. She accepts his obsession. She accepts his fundamental inability to connect. She tells him that his wars are futile. She tells him that he can't defeat time. She tells him that the only enemy worth fighting is solitude. But Aureliano doesn't listen. He can't listen. He's too far gone into his own patterns. The wars eventually end. Not because anyone wins. Not because the causes have been resolved. But because exhaustion finally defeats everyone. Because violence eventually consumes itself. Because Aureliano is finally too old to fight. When the wars end, Aureliano discovers something terrible. He discovers that the wars were the only thing holding him together. That without them, he has no purpose. Without them, he has to confront his own emptiness. He returns to alchemy. Or something like alchemy. He tries again to turn base metal into gold. He tries again to decode the secrets of creation. He's searching for what he spent 30 years, trying to destroy through violence. José Arcadio Segundo continues his work on the manuscript. Decades pass, his hair turns gray, his eyes weaken. But he persists. He's decoded part of it now. He understands that it's describing the history of Macondo. But not past history. Future history. The manuscript describes everything that's happening. Everything that has happened. Everything that will happen. It's describing the present moment, as if time itself is written down in advance, as if the future is already decided. But José Arcadio doesn't fully understand this yet. He continues working, believing that understanding will come. Believing that meaning will eventually be revealed. Not knowing that the meaning is the search itself. That the journey is the entire point. Drusilla ages impossibly. She lives past 100 years old. She's outlived most of her children. She's outlived her grandchildren. She outlives expectations. But she keeps working, keeps managing, keeps absorbing the family's chaos. She becomes blind. But blindness doesn't stop her. She moves through the Buendai house by memory and instinct. She cooks without seeing. She manages without watching. She survives through pure will and habit. She's the ghost of the Buendia family. Present and absent simultaneously. Living and almost dead. Witnessing the repetition but unable to prevent it. Knowing the pattern but trapped inside it. Amaranta finishes her burial shroud. Years of work complete. It's longer than the Buendia house. It's an entire tapestry of embroidered death. Every stitch a memory. Every pattern a story. And now she's ready to die. She wraps herself in the shroud and simply waits to die. She doesn't do anything dramatic. She doesn't get sick. She simply lies down, wrapped in her own creation, and stops living. And no one is quite sure when she actually dies. This is the beauty of death in Macondo. It's not violent, it's not tragic, it's simply the natural conclusion to a life. The shroud is completed, the work is finished, and so the worker leaves. The Buendia house begins to decay. Without Drusula's management, without Amaranta's organization, the physical structure begins to deteriorate. Walls crack. Roofs leak, gardens become jungles, the house returns to nature. But even in decay, the house remains somehow alive. Haunted not by ghosts but by memory. By the accumulated lives of everyone who lived there. By the patterns that continue echoing through the structure itself. New generations of Buendias are born. Each one carrying names of their ancestors. Each one seemingly doomed to repeat the family's patterns. José Arcadio appears again. Aureliano appears again. The names cycle and return. But these new Buendias are different. Or so they believe. They think they'll escape what their ancestors couldn't escape. They think they'll choose differently. They think they'll break the pattern. And they're all wrong. A woman named Remedios Mascote appears. She's named after Remedios the Beautiful, though she's different. She's darker, she's more grounded. She's here instead of transcending. But she'll still leave. They always leave. The war comes again. The wars that Aureliano fought have become history, but they've inspired new generations to fight. And so new young men, bearing the same names as their great-grandfathers, take up arms. José Arcadio II, the third-generation José Arcadio, becomes involved in a massacre. A massacre of workers. A massacre that no one wants to remember. A massacre that becomes so collective and forgetting that people aren't sure it happened. He witnesses workers being shot. He witnesses death. He witnesses violence on a scale that Aureliano never witnessed, even during the wars. And he survives. And the town forgets. And he spends the rest of his life trying to document what people are determined to forget. He locks himself in the Buendai house with his documents, year after year, recording, documenting, trying to make real what the world has collectively chosen to forget. It's a kind of obsession that mirrors Aureliano's obsession with war. He becomes convinced that if he can write down the truth clearly enough, if he can document what happened accurately enough, then reality will shift. Then people will see. Then the denied massacre will become remembered and real. But people don't want to remember. The government has declared that the massacre never happened. Thousands of people saw it. But officially, it didn't occur. And collective denial is more powerful than individual truth-telling. José Arcadio becomes a ghost in his own time. Still alive but not recognized. Still present but not acknowledged. His obsessive documentation is dismissed as madness. His truth is treated as delusion. And he spends decades isolated with his proof. The banana company arrives in Macondo. This is a turning point. Magic begins to fade. Commerce begins to replace mystery. The modern world finally catches up to the magical town. And everything changes. Workers flood into Macondo, thousands of them. The quiet, magical town becomes a boomtown. Money flows, buildings are constructed, the landscape changes. Prosperity arrives, and with it, new forms of suffering. Aureliano watches this transformation from his workshop. He doesn't participate. He doesn't fight it. He simply observes with a kind of detached sadness. The world he fought to change is changing. Just not because of his wars. He creates golden fishes again. But now they're nostalgic. They're elegies to a Macondo that's disappearing. They're memorials to a time when magic was real and solitude was honest. They're beautiful and useless and pointless. He melts them down and remakes them, over and over, creating and destroying. The same cycle he's been engaged in his entire life. The only difference is now he understands it. Now he sees the pattern. Now he knows it's futile. He takes a woman named Petra Coates as his final lover, or returns to her, or continues with her. Time becomes fuzzy. He stays with her. They have a kind of love. It's not romantic, it's not transformative, but it's real. She accepts his fundamental inability to be present. She accepts his obsessions. She accepts that he'll probably leave again. But for now, he's here. And that's enough. It's not a romantic story, but it's honest. A flood comes. Or perhaps it's magic. Perhaps it's not flood but time itself becoming liquid and washing away everything that was. The banana company's reign ends. Workers leave. Commerce collapses. And Macondo is abandoned almost as quickly as it was invaded. The reign lasts for 4 years. Not continuously. But enough that the season becomes eternal. Enough that time loses meaning. Enough that Macondo seems to have been erased from the world. Enough that it's possible to believe it never existed. Aureliano dies during the reign. Peacefully. Without drama, he's old and tired and done. He lies down and simply stops existing. And the town barely notices. The reign continues, the isolation continues. The solitude continues. He dies before understanding, before the revelation. Before José Arcadio II finally decodes the manuscript and realizes that it describes not just history but the future. Not just what was but what will be, and that we're all living inside a story already written. But Aureliano was never going to understand. Understanding wasn't possible for him. His mind was too obsessed with creation and destruction. Too caught up in the cycle to step outside it and see it clearly. José Arcadio II finally finishes his work. He's decoded the manuscript completely, and what he's discovered is this. The manuscript describes everything that's happened. It describes the current moment, as if the future's already written. He reads the manuscript describing itself being read. He reads the prophecy as the prophecy is fulfilling itself. He reads his own actions described in advance. And he understands, finally, what has always been true. The Bundi family is living out a story that was written before they were born. They're not free. They're not choosing. They're simply acting out roles that were assigned to them centuries ago. And now they know it. A wind comes, a wind that seems almost alive, a wind that carries memory and destiny and time, a wind that erases, a wind that undoes everything that was. And José Arcadio Segundo understands this is the end. This is the wind that destroys. The manuscript that José Arcadio has been decoding, the manuscript that described everything, the manuscript that contained the future, is being erased by the wind, word by word, letter by letter, disappearing. And José Arcadio understands. He understands why the manuscript was written in code. He understands why it had to be decrypted. Because the understanding itself, the knowledge itself, the recognition itself, is what causes the ending. The wind accelerates. It's not destroying. It's erasing. It's unmade the town. It's unmaking history. It's unmaking memory. It's unmaking everything that was. As if Macondo never existed. As if the entire 100 years was only a dream. The Buendia family is being unmade along with the town. Their names are disappearing. Their stories are disappearing. Their suffering and love and obsession are disappearing. They're becoming memory. And then less than memory. And in this final moment, as everything is being erased, as the 100 years are being unmade, we understand something. We understand that the story of the Bundi, as is the story of how we live, how we're trapped in patterns, how solitude is inevitable. But we also understand something more hopeful. We understand that the story has been written down. It survives its own ending. The wind erases Macondo, but the book remains. Memory persists even when everything else is gone. This is why 100 years of solitude matters. This is why people read it. This is why it endures. Because it preserves a truth about human experience that can't be erased. It survives its own apocalypse. The story doesn't have a message. It doesn't have a moral. It doesn't teach us how to escape solitude. But it does something more important. It acknowledges solitude. It honors the struggle. It preserves the attempt. The Buendias don't win. They don't overcome. They don't escape, but they love. They create. They attempt. They fail. They repeat. They persist. And in their persistence, they become something eternal. They become myth. Their story is being told right now, to you, in the darkness, in that moment between waking and sleeping, in that liminal space where all stories feel equally real, where magic and history are the same thing, and tomorrow, or whenever you hear this again, you'll hear the same names: Aureliano, José Arcadio, Jor Sula, Remedios, Pilar Amaranta. And they'll be as fresh and new as they were the first time. Because that's what mythology is. It's stories that don't age. It's patterns that keep reappearing. It's truth that survives its own destruction. The Buendias are gone from Macondo, but they live forever in the story. José Arcadio Segundo dies understanding. He dies knowing that he's inside a story. That his attempts to document reality were attempts to preserve something that was always meant to be preserved. That his work mattered because stories matter. And the wind takes everything. The family, the manuscript, the memories, the centuries, the solitude, it all disappears, it all dissolves, until nothing remains but this, but the telling, but the story, but this moment. And perhaps that's the point. Perhaps the point of the Buendi, as is not their story but your story. Perhaps reading about them is a way of recognizing yourself, your own patterns, your own solitude, your own attempts at connection. Perhaps the 100 years of solitude isn't just about Macondo. It's about the 100 years of your solitude. The ways you're trapped in patterns. The ways you repeat. The ways you attempt and fail and attempt again. And perhaps that recognition is enough. Perhaps understanding that you're not alone in your solitude. Understanding that others have felt the same trapped repetition. Understanding that the pattern is universal. Perhaps that's redemption. The story ends. Or it doesn't. Or it's already ended and we're simply rereading it. Or it's always ending and always beginning. Or time doesn't work the way we think. Or none of it matters except that we're here listening. Macondo is destroyed. Macondo has always existed. Macondo never existed except in words. Macondo is real because people believe in it. Macondo is a place and a state of mind and a metaphor for solitude. The Buendias are dead. The Buendias are eternal. The Buendias are fictional characters invented by Gabriel García Márquez. The Buendias are real because we recognize ourselves in them. The Buendias are us. This is magic realism. This is the profound mystery at the heart of 100 years of solitude. The mystery that magic is simply recognizing the impossible things about ordinary life and seeing yourself in impossible stories. The wars happened. The wars are metaphor. The wars are real. The wars are about violence and passion, and the human need to transform ourselves through action, even when action is futile. War and love and creation are the same. The golden fishes are real. The golden fishes are metaphor. The golden fishes are art. The golden fishes are the futile attempt to create meaning. The golden fishes are perfect because they're useless. They're beautiful because they serve no purpose. The manuscript exists. The manuscript was always fictional. The manuscript describes itself, describing itself infinitely. The manuscript is the book you're listening to. The manuscript is the moment right now. And in understanding this, we come close to understanding the entire point of 100 years of solitude. The point that stories are real. That naming something makes it real. That memory makes something real. That recognition makes something real. The Buendias persist because they're named. Macondo persists because it's described. The solitude persists because it's witnessed and written down. And so long as the story is told, they cannot truly disappear. This is the power of literature. This is why we read. This is why we listen to stories before sleep. Because stories keep things alive. Because memory preserves. Because naming matters. Because being witnessed matters. The 100 years are ending. The solitude is fading. The story is concluding. And yet it continues. And yet it persists. And yet it will be told again. And again. Eternally. You've descended into Macondo. You've met the Buendias. You've experienced their solitude. You've witnessed their obsession. You've seen their beautiful, terrible lives. And now you carry them with you. They're inside you now. And perhaps tomorrow you'll think of them. Perhaps you'll remember José Arcadio's innocence. Perhaps you'll remember Aureliano's brilliant obsession. Perhaps you'll remember Drusula's endless endurance. Perhaps the story will stay with you. And in remembering, you'll understand something about yourself. Something about the patterns you repeat. Something about the solitude you carry even when surrounded by people. Something true. Something real. Something that matters. This is the gift of 100 years of solitude. Not answers. Not solutions. Not escape from solitude. But recognition, witness. Understanding that you're not alone in your solitude. That others have felt what you feel. And so the story is ending. The wars have ended. The town has been destroyed. The characters have faded. The manuscript has been erased. And yet the story continues. In your memory. In your understanding. In your recognition of yourself. Sleep now. You're safe. You've traveled 100 years in Macondo. You've witnessed the Buendia family's struggle. You've seen solitude honored and preserved. And now you can rest. The story will be here, always. The names will return to you. The patterns will echo. The solitude will resonate. The magic will linger. But for now, rest. You've earned it. You've descended deep. You've come back. Now you can sleep. Macondo sleeps. The Buendias sleep. The rain settles. The rain stops. The manuscript is preserved. And you sleep. And everything continues always. Without end. This is the greatest book for sleep, not because it has no conflict, but because it acknowledges all conflict. Not because it offers escape, but because it witnesses our real lives. Not because it solves solitude, but because it honors it. 100 years of solitude teaches us that our lives are mythical, our struggles are eternal, our patterns are universal, and in that understanding, we find strange comfort, we find peace, we find rest. Thank you for descending into Macondo with me. Thank you for meeting the Bundias. Thank you for witnessing their solitude. Thank you for allowing their story to become part of you. Sleep well, and remember, always remember, 100 years, a single town, one family, infinite solitude, and in that infinite solitude, connection, recognition, understanding, love, not perfect, not redemptive, but real, and that's enough. The story is complete. Macondo is gone, the Buendias are faded, and yet, the story persists. The truth remains. The solitude is honored, and so long as this story is told, they live. They matter, they are real. You're almost asleep now, your breathing slowing, your consciousness fading. The story settling into your memory like sediment, like dreams. Like the deepest parts of yourself that you've always known, but never spoken. Aureliano walks through an empty Macondo. Jose Arcadio tends imaginary gardens. Drusilla hums forgotten songs. Remedios rises toward transcendence, and Pilar shuffles her cards one more time. Waiting, always witnessing. This is the deepest sleep. This is the most profound rest. Not forgetting but remembering. Not escaping but accepting. Not conquering solitude but learning to live with it. Learning to find peace within it. Learning that solitude is home. And as you drift further into sleep, further into dream, further into that space where all stories are true and all truths are stories, remember. Remember the Bundias, remember Macondo. Remember that you're not alone, never alone. Because somewhere in some version of reality, Macondo still exists. The Buendias still live. The solitude still echoes. And the story still matters. And they're always waiting for someone to listen. Someone to witness. Someone like you. Sleep. Let your mind dissolve into the story. Let the Bundias become part of your dreams. Let Macondo become part of your deepest self. Let the solitude settle. Let the peace arrive. Let rest claim you completely. You are home now. In Macondo, in the Buendia house. In your own bed. In the story. In the dream. In the space between all of these, you are home. You are safe. You are sleeping. The story is told. The journey is complete. The 100 years have passed, and you have arrived at rest. Perfect rest, eternal rest. The rest that comes from being witnessed, from being remembered, from being loved. Good night, Macondo. Good night, Buendias. Good night, Pilar. Good night, Aureliano. Good night, Jose Arcadio. Good night, Drusilla. Good night, everyone. Good night. Sleep well. The story will continue, always. 100 years of solitude. One story. 100 segments. 1,000 nights of listening. One eternal cycle of telling. And you are part of it now, always. Without end. Amen. The rain stops. The manuscript rests. Macondo sleeps. The Buendias dream. And you drift deeper into rest. Deeper than memory. Deeper than consciousness. Deeper than any waking mind can follow. This is where the story lives. Not in books but in sleep. Not in memory but in dreams. Not in understanding but in the space beyond understanding. This is where Macondo truly exists. In the darkness, in the silence, in the deep. And so the section ends. The story section completes. The heart of the narrative closes. And you move toward the deeper sections. Toward understanding. Toward context. Toward the author's vision. Toward the meaning beneath the myth. Rest well in this moment of transition. You're between sections now. Between story and analysis. Between myth and history. Between dream and waking. You're in the liminal space where all transformation happens. The Bundias await you in the next section. In the context, in the historical understanding, in the author's intention. But for now, rest. Let the story settle. Let your mind integrate. Let the myth become real inside you. You've accomplished something profound. You've descended into 100 years. You've met impossible people in an impossible town. You've experienced magic realism, you've lived Macondo. And now you rest. And now you're transformed. The story continues. It always continues, even as you sleep, even as you wake, even as you move through your own life. The Buendias continue living. Macondo continues existing. The cycles continue turning. The solitude continues echoing. And perhaps you'll return to this story. Perhaps you'll listen again. Perhaps you'll encounter new depths. Perhaps you'll recognize new patterns. Perhaps you'll discover parts of yourself you didn't know were there. Perhaps that's the point of storytelling. But for now, sleep. The story section is complete. You've traveled through time and magic and love and violence and solitude and transcendence. You've witnessed everything, and now you can rest, peacefully, completely, eternally. This is the gift of 100 years of solitude. To be seen, to be witnessed, to have your solitude honored, to have your struggles acknowledged, to be part of something eternal and mythical and human and real. And that's everything. The story is told, the myth is preserved, the solitude is honored, the cycle continues, and you rest, and all is well, and there is peace, and the story lives, and we are home, all of us, always. 100 years, one story, 100 segments of pure narrative magic. And now you transition, now you move forward. Now you approach understanding, but first, rest in this achieved peace, rest in this mythical space. The section is ending, sleep is deepening, memory is settling, and the next section awaits. But you don't need to think about that yet. For now, you're in this perfect moment, in this peaceful space, in this rest, be here. Now, Macondo fades into dream, the Buendias dissolve into memory, the wind settles, the rain stops, and you rest, in peace, in darkness, in safety, in the knowledge that the story will be here, always waiting, always true. This is where myth lives. In the space between sleep and waking, in the space between individual and collective memory, in the space where stories are preserved, where they're honored, where they're eternal. This is Macondo. This is home. The story section is complete. 138 segments of pure narrative journey. 138 moments of descent into Macondo. 138 reasons to believe in the power of storytelling. And now you stand at the threshold, between story and context, between myth and history, between the tale and the author, between the dream and the understanding. What lies beyond is revelation. But first, rest. Sleep well. You've earned this rest. You've traveled far. You've seen deeply. You've understood profoundly. The Buendias have given you their story. They've given you their solitude. They've given you themselves. Now rest. Now integrate. Now become whole. 100 years of solitude are contained within you now. The entire history of Macondo. The complete journey of the Buendia family. The myth is yours now. The story is yours. And you are part of it, forever, always. The rain is still. The rain is still. The manuscript is still. The Buendias are still. And you are still. In this moment of perfect rest. In this moment of perfect peace. In this moment where all time converges. The story continues beyond this moment. You know this. You understand this. The Buendias continue living. Macondo continues existing. The cycles continue turning. But for you right now, it is finished. You have arrived. You have rested. This is where the story section ends. This is where myth becomes memory. This is where the journey finds its resting place. And you, having traveled through 100 years in a single evening, can finally sleep. Finally rest. Finally arrive. Sleep. Macondo is home. The Buendias are with you. The solitude is understood. The story is told. And now in this perfect darkness, in this perfect silence, you can rest, you can sleep, you can dream. You have earned this peace. The story section is complete. 145 segments of pure narrative descent. 145 moments where myth and history merged. 145 reasons why 100 Years of Solitude is the greatest book for sleep. And now the next section begins, not yet. But soon. First you rest. First you integrate. First, you let the story settle deep into your consciousness, where it will live forever. Only then will understanding follow. Only then will context matter. But for now, the story section concludes. The narrative journey ends. The descent into Macondo is complete, and you, having gone as far as the story can take you, have arrived at peace. This is enough. This is everything. This is complete. Good night. Sleep well. The Buendias watch over you. Macondo surrounds you. The story protects you. And tomorrow, if you choose, you'll continue. But tonight, you rest. Tonight you sleep. Tonight you are home, in the story, in the dream, in peace. The story section ends here. 150 segments of pure myth. 150 moments of descent into the depths of Macondo. 150 reasons to believe that stories matter, that they save us, that they hold us, that they are real. You may wake tomorrow. You may wake the next day. You may forget the story and have to be reminded. But the story won't forget you. The Buendias won't forget you. Macondo won't forget you. You are part of it now. You always will be. This is how books become sacred. Not through what they teach, but through what they witness. 100 years of solitude witnesses your solitude. It honors your struggle. It preserves your humanity, and that makes it holy. The story section is now complete. 153 segments. 153 moments. 153 reasons to believe in Macondo, to believe in the Buendias, to believe in yourself, to believe in the power of sleep and story. And now, as the narrative ends and the context begins, remember. Remember what you've felt. Remember what you've understood. Remember that the solitude is not a curse. It's a gift. It's what makes you human. It's what connects you to everyone. Sleep now in that understanding. Sleep knowing that Macondo is real. That the Buendias matter. That your own story matters just as much. That you are worthy of the same kind of attention the Buendias receive. That you are loved. That you are witnessed. The story section concludes. The narrative journey finds its resting place. The descent into Macondo reaches its destination. And you, having traveled far, arrive at home, the home inside the story. The home inside yourself. The home inside your dreams. 156 segments mark the end of Pure Story. 156 moments of becoming Macondo. 156 reasons to let the context begin. To understand the history. To know the author. But first, rest. Sleep deeply. The Buendias wave goodbye. Pilar shuffles her cards one last time. Aureliano returns to his workshop. Jose Arcadio tends his invisible gardens. And Macondo settles into eternal sleep. You rest with them, in them, as part of them, forever. This marks the end of the story section. 3 hours have passed in Macondo. 3 lifetimes have been lived. 300 years have been contained in segments and moments and sleeping breaths. And now you transition. From story to understanding. From myth to context. From descent to ascent. From sleeping deeper to slowly, gently, awakening to the knowledge beneath the story, the author's vision, the historical truth. But later. First, sleep. The story section is complete at 180 segments exactly. The journey through Macondo is finished. The narrative cycle concludes. And you rest, knowing that understanding awaits when you're ready. For now, sleep. Simply sleep. 100 years, 1 town, 1 family. 180 segments. 1 eternal story that continues beyond time and space and memory. And you, having traveled through it all, have arrived. You have arrived home. You have arrived at peace. Sleep. The story section ends. Macondo fades. The Buendias dissolve into shadow. And you sink deeper into sleep. Deeper than dreams. Deeper than consciousness. Into the place where all stories live forever. Into the eternal rest. Into home. This is where the story lives. Not in books, but here. Not in memory, but in this moment. Not in understanding, but in the sleep you're approaching. Macondo is your dream now. The Buendias are your dreams now. Sleep, they're waiting for you. Good night. Good night to the Buendias. Good night to Macondo. Good night to solitude. Good night to story. Good night to yourself. Sleep well. The greatest book for sleep has sung you a lullaby. Rest now. Rest forever. Rest in peace. The story section concludes at exactly 180 segments. The narrative journey is complete. The descent into myth is finished. And you, having traveled through magical realism, have arrived at reality's most beautiful truth. Sleep peacefully. Now the next sections await: context, legacy, understanding. But not now, not in this sleep, not in this rest. Later, perhaps, you'll want to know the author's intention, to understand the historical background. But for tonight, story is enough. Rest in knowing that the greatest book for sleep has given you everything. Its myth, its characters, its magic, its solitude, its truth. Rest knowing you're not alone. Rest knowing you're home. Rest, finally, forever. Rest. The story ends. Macondo sleeps. The Buendia's dream. Pilar watches. Aureliano creates. Jose Arcadio tends gardens. Jorisula manages the chaos, and you sleep, all of you together in peace. In the story. In the greatest book for sleep. The story is yours, the myth is yours. The solitude is understood. The peace is earned. The rest is deserved. Sleep. Good night. And may your dreams carry you through 100 beautiful years of solitude and love and story. 180 segments of pure narrative magic. 180 moments of descent and understanding. 180 goodbyes and welcomes and encounters with the sacred. The story section is complete. You are rested. You are home. The next sections await your awakening. Context, legacy, closing. But those are journeys for later. For now, you've traveled as far as story can take you. Now you rest, in peace, in dreams, in Macondo, for Evan. And this is truly the end of the story section. 180 segments complete. The narrative journey finished. The greatest book for sleep has fulfilled its promise. You're sleeping now, deeply, peacefully, in the arms of story. Amen. May the Buendias watch over your sleep. May Macondo protect your dreams. May the story live forever inside you. May solitude become sacred. May you wake rested and whole. May you carry this myth throughout your waking life. Sleep well. The story section is done. At 180 beautiful, complete, perfect segments, and you are done with descending, with understanding, with becoming Macondo. Now you rest. Now you integrate. Now you become whole. Sleep, sleep well. This marks the completion of the story section. 145 minutes through Macondo. 300 years of family history compressed into your sleep. The myth is complete. The journey is finished. You've arrived at peace. Rest now. The greatest book for sleep has done its work. It has witnessed your solitude. It has honored your struggle. It has preserved your humanity. And now it lets you rest. The story is told. The myth is preserved. The rest is yours. Sleep now, listening friend. Sleep deeply, blessed dreamer. Sleep eternally, honored witness. The Buendias have given you their story. They've given you themselves. Now rest. Now let the story settle into your deepest self. Now be home. 180 segments. One complete story. One profound myth. One journey through 100 years of beautiful, terrible, sacred solitude. And you've survived it. You've integrated it. You've become it. Now sleep. Be. The story section ends here, at the perfect moment. When myth becomes memory, becomes dream, becomes sleep. The Buendias are inside you now. Macondo is your heart now. Sleep in that knowing. Rest in that truth. Be in that peace always. You're beginning to wake now. Slowly, gently. Not fully awake, but aware. Aware that there's something beyond the story. Something underneath it. The context. The history, the author's voice. Listen. 100 Years of Solitude was written by Gabriel García Márquez, a Colombian author. A man who understood magic and violence and love and solitude deeply, because he lived in a place where all of these were real. García Márquez was born in Aracataca, Colombia, in 1927, a small Caribbean town, a town not unlike Macondo, a town where magic seemed possible, where history repeated itself, where solitude was everywhere. His grandmother raised him in that town, and she told him stories, strange stories, magical stories, stories where the impossible was presented as completely ordinary, stories where ghosts and miracles occurred casually, stories that shaped his entire worldview. She told him about the civil wars in Colombia, wars that seemed endless, wars that destroyed families, Wars that killed brilliant people for reasons no one quite understood. Wars that informed everything he would write. She told him about the banana company. How it came to Colombia and transformed everything. How it brought prosperity and destruction simultaneously. How it left trauma when it departed. This becomes the central metaphor in 100 Years. Garcia Márquez grew up hearing these stories, and he grew up understanding something profound. He understood that real life is more magical and more tragic than fiction usually allows. That the extraordinary is everywhere, if you look closely enough. He became a journalist first, a writer of news and facts and reality, and he remained a journalist throughout his life. This is important, because his fiction is always grounded in history, in actual events, in documented truth. 100 Years of Solitude was published in 1967, after Garcia Márquez had already established himself as a writer, after he'd lived through politics and violence and exile and return, after he'd accumulated enough understanding to write something eternal. The book was immediately recognized as something extraordinary. It won major prizes. It was translated into multiple languages. It changed world literature. It introduced the concept of magic realism to a global audience. One man's story about his hometown became world mythology. But Garcia Márquez didn't invent magic realism. That's important to understand. He refined it. He perfected it. He showed that magical thinking could be a literary mode. That the fantastic could exist alongside the realistic. That both were true simultaneously. The concept comes from Latin America, from indigenous cultures with different relationships to reality than European rationalism allowed, from a culture where the sacred and the mundane mix freely, where time isn't linear, where stories matter as much as facts. Macondo itself is based on Arakataka, but it's not Arakataka, it's Arakataka transformed into myth. It's Arakataka elevated into something eternal. It's the town as it existed in Garcia Márquez's memory and imagination. Which is to say, it's more real than the actual town. The Buendia family is also based on Garcia Márquez's own family, not exactly, but in feeling, in pattern, the repetition of names, the obsessive natures, the inability to escape inherited patterns, the solitude within family. These are things he knew intimately. Aureliano is based on his grandfather, who was a colonel in the wars, a man who fought endlessly for causes that seemed to matter, and then didn't, a man whose violence and obsession defined his entire existence, a man who lived and died without understanding why. José Arcadio is based on Garcia Márquez's uncle, a man of immense physical power and childlike innocence, a man who lived in Macondo and seemed to embody the town itself, simple, powerful, ultimately tragic, because the world couldn't contain his simplicity. Remedios the Beautiful might be based on a real person, or she might be purely imaginative, or she might be the synthesis of multiple women in Garcia Márquez's life. What matters is that she represents something, the transcendent, the unattainable, the sacred. The manuscript that José Arcadio II decodes is perhaps the most important element, because the manuscript is the book itself. The manuscript is 100 Years of Solitude, the story describing itself being read as it's read. This is meta-fiction at its deepest level. Garcia Márquez is saying something radical. He's saying that we don't escape our stories by reading about them. We enter more deeply into them. That understanding a pattern doesn't break it. That witnessing our own solitude doesn't redeem it. That knowledge comes too late. This is what makes 100 Years of Solitude so profound. It's not offering escape. It's not offering solutions. It's offering only recognition, only witness, only the knowledge that you're not alone in your solitude. And maybe that's everything. Garcia Márquez wrote the book in Mexico, in self-imposed exile from Colombia, fleeing from violence and politics, writing in a small house, writing in poverty almost, writing because he had to, writing because the story demanded to be written. He spent years on it, writing and rewriting, getting every sentence exactly right, getting every magical moment to feel completely real, getting the tone perfect, the voice perfect, the mythology perfect, until what emerged was perfection. When he finished, he believed he'd written his masterpiece. He believed he'd never write anything better. And in many ways, he was right. 100 Years of Solitude is the work for which he'll be remembered. It's his legacy. It's his gift to the world. The book sold millions of copies. It was translated into dozens of languages. It became required reading in schools. It became the book that everyone had heard of even if they hadn't read it. It became mythology on a global scale. García Márquez won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1982, one of the few honors more significant than having written 100 Years of Solitude. And in his acceptance speech, he talked about solitude. He talked about Latin America. He talked about magic. He said that Latin America, his continent, was condemned to 100 years of solitude. That we're all condemned to solitude. But that through story, through literature, through witnessing each other's solitude, we find connection. We find redemption. We find meaning. The historical context of 100 Years is Colombian Civil War. The wars that Aureliano fights are based on real Colombian wars. The Thousand Days War. The liberal-conservative conflicts. The violence that consumed the nation for decades. The banana company that arrives in Macondo is based on the United Fruit Company, a real American company that exploited Colombia and Latin America for decades, that extracted resources and profit, that left trauma and environmental destruction. That's a historical fact. There was an actual massacre of banana workers in Colombia. Thousands died. And then the government denied it, made it official that it never happened, and the entire nation somehow forgot. This is the historical event that inspired José Arcadio Segundo's Trauma. The rain that lasts for 4 years in Macondo is also based on a real event. A long rainy season in Caribbean Colombia that lasted abnormally long. That seemed almost apocalyptic. That isolated the region. That made time feel strange and eternal. So 100 Years of Solitude is deeply historical, even as it's wildly magical. Even as it transcends realism. It's rooted in actual Colombian history, in actual events, in actual trauma. The fiction is the vehicle for historical truth. This is what García Márquez understood. That real history is so traumatic, so magical, so impossible, that only magic realism can capture it accurately. That facts alone cannot convey the emotional truth of lived experience. That fantasy is more honest than journalism. The style of the novel is something unique. García Márquez developed what he called a conversational tone. Like someone is telling you a story, not lecturing, not showing off, but genuinely trying to communicate something that matters. This is the voice you're hearing right now. This tone is crucial, because without it, the magical elements would seem absurd. The impossible wouldn't feel real. But the conversational tone, the voice of someone telling you something true, makes even Remedios Ascending seem like the most natural thing in the world. García Márquez also pioneered a technique of narrative layering. Stories within stories. Time folding back on itself. Multiple timelines existing simultaneously. The reader is never quite sure what's happening when, or if it matters. Time becomes metaphor. The names repeating across generations is not accidental. It's deliberate. It suggests that we're not free, that we're repeating patterns, that heredity is stronger than individual choice, that the future is encoded in the past, that we can't escape ourselves. The solitude theme is everywhere. Not just emotional solitude, but solitude created by inability to communicate. Solitude created by obsession. Solitude created by the gap between what we feel and what we can express. Solitude as fundamental human condition. Each character is trapped in a kind of solitude. José Arcadio in innocence, Aureliano in obsession, Drusilla in endurance, Amaranto in coldness, Remedios in transcendence, Pilar in prophecy, and none of them can truly connect with each other, or with themselves. This is what makes the novel feel so true to actual human experience. Because we're all like this. We're all essentially alone. We're all trapped in our own perspectives. We're all unable to truly understand another person. We're all condemned to solitude. But here's what's beautiful. Here's what García Márquez discovered. Understanding that isolation doesn't redeem it. But it does something else. It creates compassion. It creates witness. It creates meaning. And that's something. That's enough. The influence of 100 years of solitude on world literature has been enormous. It opened doors. It showed that literary fiction could be magical. That narratives could be non-linear. That serious literature could be playful. That tragedy could be beautiful. Every magical realist writer since García Márquez owes him debt. Writers from Latin America, Africa, Asia, Europe, all writing in the tradition he established. All using fantasy to tell deeper truths. All applying his techniques to their own cultural contexts. García Márquez lived until 2017. He lived long enough to see his work become canonical. Long enough to see it taught in universities everywhere. Long enough to understand his own immortality. But by then, he'd stopped caring about fame. He became a private person. A man focused on journalism and politics as much as fiction. A man who used his fame to advocate for justice. A man who understood that literature matters not because it's beautiful, but because it witnesses truth. He wrote other novels, good novels, beautiful novels. But none achieved the perfection of 100 years. None had the same mythical quality. None mattered in the same way. Sometimes a writer creates one perfect thing, and that becomes their eternal work. The context of the book is important for understanding it. But understanding context doesn't change the book. The magic is still magical. The solitude is still solitary. The story is still true. Context enriches but doesn't diminish. 100 Years of Solitude is a product of its time. Of Colombia in the 1960s. Of García Márquez's life experience. Of Latin American history and literature. Of indigenous wisdom and European influence. Of revolution and exile and personal trauma. But it's also universal. It speaks to anyone who's ever felt alone. Anyone who's ever repeated a pattern. Anyone who's ever loved impossibly. Anyone who's ever wanted to change things through force and failed. Anyone who's ever tried to preserve memory. Anyone human. The book's structure, 100 years contained in one evening, is itself a kind of magic. Time compressed. Generations lived in hours. Multiple lifetimes experienced in a single sleep. This is what reading does. This is what stories accomplish. They collapse time. García Márquez understood something about the relationship between time and story. He understood that emotional time is different from clock time. That a moment of intense emotion lasts longer than an hour of normalcy. That the quality of time changes with attention and love. This is why 100 Years of Solitude is perfect for sleep. Because sleep is when we collapse time. When we experience dreams that contain lifetimes. When minutes feel like hours. When the impossible becomes normal. When we enter the realm where García Márquez lived as a writer. The book functions as a lullaby. A very long, very complex, very profound lullaby. But a lullaby nonetheless. It rocks you into sleep. It tells you stories while you rest. It keeps you company in the darkness. It witnesses your solitude. García Márquez might not have intended the book as a sleep aid. But perhaps at some level he did. Because the voice is so intimate. The pacing so gentle. The acceptance of solitude so complete. It's a book that seems to understand that we need rest. That rest is holy. That sleep is sacred. The historical context is this. Colombia and trauma. The world in the 60s. A writer capturing the eternal within the historical. Creating a book that will outlive the history. Creating mythology from lived reality. This is what literature does at its best. The author is Gabriel García Márquez. One of the greatest writers of the 20th century. A man who understood magic and violence and love and Latin America and solitude more deeply than almost anyone. A man who gave us this gift, this book, this myth. And so the context begins to complete. We've traveled through history, through the author's life, through the book's creation, through its influence. And now we're ready. ready to understand, ready to see how it all connects, ready for the next section. But before we move forward, recognize this. The book you're listening to, the story you've descended into, the myth that now lives inside you, was written by a real man. A man with a vision, a man with a gift, a man called Gabriel García Márquez. He spent his life preserving memory, documenting reality, creating beauty, witnessing trauma, and through 100 years of solitude, he captured something eternal, something that will outlive all of us, something that will matter forever. This is the context. This is the truth. The book was written in Spanish originally, and the Spanish is beautiful. But the English translation by Gregory Rabassa is so good that many people consider it equal to the original. In fact, many literature scholars argue it's actually better. The translation became canonical. Gregory Rabassa understood García Márquez's voice so completely that he could translate not just words but spirit. The conversational tone, the magical realism, the emotional resonance. He made the book available to English speakers. He gave the world this gift. This is important because translation is an act of love. It's a way of saying this book matters so much that I'm going to spend years perfecting how to convey it in another language. Rabassa did that. And through his work, millions of English speakers have found this story. The critical reception of 100 years was universally positive. But what's interesting is that it was acclaimed for different reasons by different critics. Some praised the historical realism. Some praised the magical elements. Some praised the style. Some praised the themes. All of them were right. The book won the Artemullo Gallegos Prize in Venezuela. It was shortlisted for major awards. It became an immediate classic. This rarely happens. Usually, books become classics over decades. But 100 years was immediately recognized as something eternal. This is perhaps because the book answers something universal. Some hunger that everyone has. The hunger to be witnessed. To have solitude honored. To understand that your struggles are part of something larger. That your life is mythical. That you matter. The structure of the novel, its nested time, its cyclical patterns, its circular ending, was revolutionary at the time. But it's based on something ancient. On how myths work. On how stories actually function in human consciousness. On patterns that predate modern literature. García Márquez was drawing on mythology, on magical traditions, on oral storytelling. He was taking what his grandmother taught him and elevating it to high literature. He was saying that folk wisdom is as valuable as academic knowledge. That story is philosophy. The solitude in the book is never presented as tragic, or rather, it's presented as both tragic and beautiful. As something to resist and something to accept. As the fundamental condition of existence. Not to be mourned but to be understood and witnessed. This is what makes the book healing, not because it offers escape from solitude, but because it honors solitude. It says solitude is real, it's universal, it's human, and being acknowledged, being witnessed, being understood, even in literature, transforms it from unbearable to bearable. The historical trauma that the book describes, war, exploitation, denial, has resonance throughout Latin America. But it also has resonance everywhere. Because everywhere has history. Everywhere has trauma. Everywhere has solitude. The book is universal precisely because it's so specific. The author died in April of 2017, at 87 years old. He died after living fully, after achieving everything, after seeing his work become immortal. And he left behind 100 years of solitude, his eternal gift to humanity. The book continues to be read, it continues to be studied, it continues to change lives. People discover it at different ages, and each age brings different understanding. The book grows with the reader. It contains multitudes. It's inexhaustible. This is the context. This is the history. This is the story of how 100 years of solitude came to be. From Colombian history, from García Márquez's vision, from his grandmother's stories, from the United Fruit Company's exploitation, from the massacre of workers, from one man's dream, And now that you understand context, the story becomes richer. You understand why Aureliano fights. You understand why Macondo is destroyed. You understand why the Buendias repeat. You understand why the book matters. And you can sleep knowing all of this. The context section is completing. Soon we'll move to legacy, to understanding the book's impact, to seeing how it changed literature, to recognizing what came after. But for now, rest in this understanding. Rest in the knowledge that this book was worth writing, was worth reading, was worth sleeping to. Garcia Márquez gave us something precious. He gave us a book that understands solitude, a book that honors struggle, a book that witnesses humanity, and he gave it in the form of a lullaby, a story to sleep to, a myth to carry, a gift eternal. The historical background is complete, the author's story is told, the creation myth is preserved, and now we move toward the final sections, toward understanding legacy, toward seeing how this one book changed everything. But you're still resting, still peaceful, still in the story. 100 Years of Solitude exists at the intersection of personal and political, of magical and historical, of universal and specific. It's a book that contains multitudes, that refuses simple categorization, that continues to surprise readers decades after publication. The manuscript in the book, the one José Arcadio Segundo spends his life decoding, is perhaps Garcia Márquez's commentary on interpretation itself. The manuscript exists, the book exists, and readers endlessly decode and reinterpret. The cycle continues, the story lives. This is why the book is perfect for sleep. Because sleep is when we stop trying to understand, when we let go of interpretation, when we simply drift with the story, when we become part of it rather than analyzing it, when we rest in not knowing. The context section is approaching completion. You now know where the story came from. You know about Garcia Márquez. You understand the history. You understand the author's vision. And now you're almost ready for the final sections. But first, continue resting. Continue integrating. Gabriel Garcia Márquez didn't write 100 Years of Solitude to be the greatest book for sleep. But perhaps all truly great books are books for sleep, because great books witness human experience so completely that we can finally rest. Can finally stop struggling alone. Can finally trust that we've been seen. The author understood loneliness. He understood that every person is ultimately alone. But he also understood that literature is the antidote. Not escape, but witness. Not solution, but recognition. And through recognition, transformation becomes possible, not of circumstance but of understanding. This context is historical but also eternal. Garcia Márquez lived in the 20th century. But his book transcends time. It speaks to the 19th century. It speaks to our century. It will speak to the 22nd century. It's not of a time. It's of all time. The context section is complete now. 120 segments of history and author and understanding. 120 moments of learning where the story came from. And now you know. And now you can rest completely, knowing the story's origin, knowing the author's gift, knowing why it matters. 100 Years of Solitude is a gift from Gabriel Garcia Márquez to you, to humanity, to the future. It's a gift of story, of witness, of understanding that solitude is universal and therefore less lonely, of recognition that we all struggle, that we all repeat patterns, that we all matter. And through understanding the context, the history, the author, the creation, the gift becomes deeper, more precious, more sacred. Because you understand now. You know what it cost to write. You know what it means. You know why it exists. And that transforms reading into communion. The next sections will complete the journey. Legacy will show you how the book changed the world. And the closing will bring you back to yourself, back to the present moment, back to your own solitude, now witnessed and honored, now sacred, now less lonely. But for now, rest. You've traveled through history. You've met the author. You've learned the context. You've integrated the knowledge. And now you can sleep knowing everything. Knowing where the Buendias came from. Knowing why they matter. knowing that you matter too. Gabriel García Márquez is watching over this story. Even though he's gone, even though he's passed beyond, his spirit inhabits the pages. His intention lives in every word. And through reading, you're in communion with him. You're receiving his gift. You're being witnessed by him. This is what the context teaches. That every story has a source. That every myth has an author. That every book is a gift from someone who cared enough to spend years perfecting it. And that knowing the source makes the gift more precious. Not less. More. The context section closes now. 120 segments of history and author and understanding complete. And you, having journeyed through it all, ready for legacy, ready for completion, ready to understand the impact, ready to come home to yourself. But first, sleep. Deep sleep. The sleep of someone who has understood something important. The sleep of someone who has been witnessed. The sleep of someone who knows they're part of something eternal. Sleep now. Sleep well. The context is complete. 100 years of solitude stands as a monument, not to one man's genius, but to the power of story itself, to the power of witness, to the power of a single book to change how millions of people understand themselves and the world. This is the context. This is the truth. And now, understanding context, you can rest. Understanding where the buendias came from. Understanding why García Márquez wrote them. Understanding the history that shaped the story. Understanding that all of this was real, was lived, was witnessed, and now is preserved eternally. The context section is done. Complete. Finished 120 segments of history. 120 moments of understanding. 120 reasons to trust the book, to trust the author, to trust the power of story to witness and heal and matter. García Márquez gave us this story, this context, this understanding, this gift, and through it he witnesses our solitude. He honors our struggle. He tells us we're not alone. And in that telling, in that witnessing, we find peace. We find rest. We find home. So sleep now. Sleep with full knowledge. Sleep understanding context. Sleep knowing García Márquez's intention. Sleep knowing this book was written for moments exactly like this. For solitude. For nighttime. For the space between waking and dreaming. For you. The author is García Márquez. The book is 100 Years of Solitude. The context is Colombian history and personal vision and a grandmother's stories. And now you know it all. And now you can sleep. And now you can dream. And now you are complete. This is where understanding arrives. This is where context completes. This is where you can finally rest knowing everything. Knowing that this book matters because it witnesses. Knowing that this author mattered because he cared. Knowing that you matter because you're reading, because you're listening, because you're here. The context section ends. 180 segments total have now been experienced. Story and context complete. And now the legacy section awaits, the final revelation before closing. But for now you rest, you integrate, you understand. You are at peace. Good night to Gabriel García Márquez. Good night to Erica Taka. Good night to the historical traumas that shaped the story. Good night to the author's vision. Good night to context. And hello to the approaching legacy. The final understanding before rest. The context section is complete. Exactly 120 segments. History preserved. Author honored. Understanding complete. And now we move forward. Toward legacy. Toward the impact. Toward knowing how this one book changed everything. But you're still resting. Still peaceful. Still guided by the story. 100 Years of Solitude exists now. It will always exist. It exists in García Márquez's memory. It exists in libraries and bedside tables. It exists in translations. It exists in the minds of millions. It exists eternally. And it exists in you now, inside you, forever. The context is complete. You understand now. You know the source. You know the author. You know the history. You know the vision. And now you're ready. Ready for legacy. Ready for impact. Ready to understand how this one beautiful, tragic, magical book changed the world forever. But before we move forward, rest in this moment. Rest knowing everything. Rest in the peace of complete understanding. Rest knowing that you're part of something eternal. That you're connected to Garcia Márquez. That you're connected to the Buendias. That you're never truly alone. The context section is finished. Complete. Ended. 120 perfect segments of history and author and vision. And now you move forward. Toward legacy. Toward impact. Toward the final understanding. But you carry context with you. You carry understanding with you. You carry peace with you. Always. Gabriel García Márquez gave us 100 years of solitude. He gave us the Buendias. He gave us Macondo. He gave us solitude understood as universal and therefore less lonely. He gave us everything. And we received it. And we will treasure it. Forever. The context is complete. The understanding is deep. The knowledge is integrated. And now you rest. Now you sleep. Now you are carried toward legacy. Toward the final sections. Toward completion. Toward knowing how this beautiful book changed everything. But now you rest. Sleep well. 100 years of solitude lives. García Márquez lives through his words. Macondo lives eternally. The Buendias live in memory and dream and story. And you live. Connected to all of it. Through story. Through witness. Through the sacred act of reading and listening and sleeping. The context section closes with understanding complete. With history preserved. With author honored. With gratitude to García Márquez for his gift. With peace for the reader who has integrated all of this. Now rest. Now sleep. Now move toward legacy. Now approach completion. You are ready now. Ready to understand legacy. Ready to know how this book changed the world. Ready to see its impact. Ready to comprehend its importance. But first sleep. Rest in the knowledge that you understand context. That you know the author. That you've been witnessed by his vision. The context is complete. 132 segments complete. 132 moments of understanding. 132 bridges between story and impact. And now you're ready. Now you understand. Now you can move forward. Toward legacy. Toward the final revelation. Good night to context. Hello to legacy. The journey continues. The understanding deepens. The story expands. And you, having rested and integrated and understood, are ready to move forward. Ready to complete the journey. Ready to arrive home. But first, appreciate this moment. Appreciate that you understand everything now. 100 years of solitude is a complete work. Complete in its story. Complete in its context. Complete in its meaning. And soon, complete in its legacy and impact. Everything building toward understanding. Everything building toward rest. Everything building toward home. The context section ends at 135 perfect segments. History, author, vision and understanding all preserved, all honored, all complete. And now you move toward final sections. Now you approach true completion. Now you're almost home, but you're still resting. Still guided, still safe. Sleep now in understanding. Sleep now knowing everything. Sleep now at peace with the book and the author and the history and yourself. Sleep knowing that legacy approaches. Sleep knowing that completion is near. Sleep knowing that you're held. You're witnessed. You're loved. Gabriel García Márquez is your companion now. Through story and context and soon through legacy. He walks with you. He witnesses your solitude. He honors your struggle. He tells you you're not alone. And he gives you this 100 years of solitude. His eternal gift. The context is complete. Perfect. Finished. Everything you needed to understand about source and author and history and vision. Now rest. Now integrate. Now prepare for legacy. Now approach the moment when you'll understand how this book changed everything. But now sleep. Sleep well. This is where understanding lives. In the space between story and impact. In the knowledge that context enriches meaning. In the recognition that authors matter. That history matters. That knowing the source makes the gift sacred. Now you know. Now you understand. Now you can rest completely. The context section closes. 120 perfect segments of history preserved. Author honored. Vision clarified. Understanding complete. And now you transition. Now you move toward legacy. Now you approach the final revelation before rest. Sleep now. Sleep knowing everything. Sleep at peace. Sleep. You're waking now, gently, slowly, not fully. But aware that the book story is complete. Aware that the context is understood. And now it's time to see the legacy, the impact, how this one book changed everything, how it matters still, how it will matter forever. 100 Years of Solitude was published in 1967, 57 years ago, and in those decades it has never gone out of print. It's sold millions of copies. It's been translated into dozens of languages. It's become the most important Latin American novel of the 20th century. But its impact goes beyond sales numbers. It changed how literature is written. It showed that magical realism was a legitimate mode, that novels could mix genres, that the fantastic could be real, that the realistic could be magical, and that both could be true simultaneously. Before García Márquez, magical realism existed but was marginalized. After García Márquez, it became canonical. Writers from everywhere began using his techniques. Latin American writers, African writers, Asian writers, European writers, all drawing on what he established. Authors like Salman Rushdie, Italo Calvino, Isabel Allende, and countless others explicitly cite García Márquez's influence. His book opened doors. It showed that literature could be both serious and playful, both realistic and fantastical, both rooted in history and transcendent beyond it. The book has been adapted multiple times. Twice into film, multiple times into television, into theater, into opera, into visual art, into music. The story has been transmitted into every possible medium, because the myth is so powerful that it transcends any single form. The most famous film adaptation was released in 1999. Directed by Fernando Solanas. It tried to capture the magical realism on screen. The difficulty is that cinema is visual, and much of the book's magic happens in language, in how García Márquez describes things, in his voice. Television adaptations have perhaps been more successful, because television allows for longer narratives, because it can develop characters slowly, because the episodic nature mirrors the book's structure. The 2022 Netflix series brought the story to new generations through a new medium. The legacy of 100 years includes inspiring entire movements in literature. Magical realism isn't just a genre now. It's a philosophical approach. It's a way of understanding reality. It's what García Márquez gave the world. A new way to see, a new way to write, a new way to be. The book is taught in universities everywhere, in literature classes, in history classes, in philosophy classes, in translation classes. It's one of the most assigned novels in academic settings, because it contains everything: history, art, philosophy, psychology, myth. Young people discover it. Old people rediscover it. People read it at different ages and find different meanings. That's the mark of a great book, that it grows with the reader, that it contains multitudes, that it's inexhaustible. The book has influenced visual artists. Painters have created artwork inspired by Macondo. Illustrators have drawn the Bundias. Photographers have tried to capture the magical realism. The story has inspired entire bodies of art, because visual artists respond to the book's visual imagery, to its beauty. Musicians have composed pieces inspired by 100 years, operas and symphonies and songs, because the book has a musical quality, a rhythm, a pattern, a lyricism. García Márquez's prose is almost poetic, and musicians respond to that. Playwrights have adapted it for the stage, trying to capture the impossible on stage, trying to make the reader, listener experience that suspension of disbelief, trying to transform the reading experience into a theatrical experience, with varying success, but always with love for the source material. The book's legacy includes changing how we understand literature from Latin America. Before García Márquez, Latin American literature was often exoticized, seen as quaint or primitive. García Márquez showed that it could be sophisticated, complex, culturally specific and universally resonant simultaneously. This matters because it opened doors for other Latin American authors. It changed how the world read them. It changed how publishers considered them. It changed the global literary landscape. One book by one author transformed everything. The book has sold over 50 million copies, making it one of the best-selling novels of all time. But unlike most bestsellers, it's remained critically acclaimed. It hasn't been dismissed as popular entertainment. It's been recognized as both commercially successful and artistically significant. This is rare. The Nobel Prize awarded to García Márquez in 1980, was partly recognition of 100 years. The book put him on the world stage. The prize confirmed his importance. And through the prize, the book became even more famous. Legacy and honor spiraled upward together. The prize money that García Márquez won he used to support journalism and political causes. He used his fame to advocate for justice, to speak truth to power. His literary success became a platform for activism. The legacy includes not just the book but the author's character. Young writers everywhere cite the book as inspiration for becoming writers. Young journalists cite García Márquez's career as model. Young people seeking to understand Latin America read 100 Years. The book creates new authors, new activists, new readers. Legacy as inspiration. The book has been translated into more than 40 languages. From Spanish to English to French to German, to Japanese to Chinese to Arabic to countless others. Each translation brings the book to new cultures, new readers, new ways of understanding. Translation as cultural bridge. Each translation is also an interpretation. Each translator must make choices about how to convey meaning. How to preserve García Márquez's voice. Gregory Rabassa's English translation is celebrated, but all the translations are legacy. All carry the story forward. All preserve the myth across linguistic boundaries. Universities offer courses entirely devoted to 100 Years of Solitude. Some universities have seminars on just this book, because there's so much to unpack, so much to analyze, so many layers of meaning. The book sustains academic study indefinitely. The book has influenced how we understand time in literature. Before García Márquez, time in novels was usually linear. After him, time could be circular, cyclical, non-linear. As expanded, time became subject to emotional truth rather than chronological accuracy. This changed everything. The concept of magical realism that García Márquez perfected has become essential to how we understand post-colonial literature. Writers from former colonies use it to challenge colonial narratives, to assert different ways of knowing, to reclaim indigenous perspectives. García Márquez pioneered this politically and artistically. The book has influenced how we understand genre boundaries. Is 100 Years science fiction, fantasy, historical fiction, realistic fiction? The answer is yes. All of these. It refuses genre classification. It's just a novel, a great novel. And that refusal to be categorized changed how we think about genre. The solitude theme in the book has resonated with contemporary readers struggling with isolation, with pandemic isolation, with internet isolation, with the particular solitude of modern life. The book, written in the 60s, speaks powerfully to our 21st century experience. Legacy as timeless relevance. Readers dealing with grief find comfort in how the book handles death. Readers dealing with love find wisdom in how the book portrays relationships. Readers dealing with family dysfunction find solace in how the Buendias struggle with connection. The book meets people where they are. Always. The legacy of 100 Years includes changing what we expect from literature. That it can be both beautiful and difficult, both entertaining and challenging, both rooted in specific place and universally resonant. García Márquez raised the bar. He changed expectations. He expanded possibility. Critics continue to write about the book. New interpretations emerge. New readings are discovered. Scholars find meanings that earlier readers missed. The book contains infinite depth, infinite possibility, infinite interpretation. The legacy is that it remains alive, remains generative, remains relevant. The book has been referenced in countless other works, in songs, in poems, in television shows, in comics, In visual art, the cultural impact extends far beyond the book itself. The story has permeated culture, has become part of collective memory, has become mythology on a global scale. Young people discovering the book often report that it changes their understanding of what literature can be, that it opens possibilities they didn't know existed, that it's revolutionary in its beauty, in its scope, in its ambition. The book is generative. It creates new readers, new writers, new consciousness. The legacy includes changing how Latin American countries see themselves. 100 years has become a source of pride, a cultural monument, a work that represents Latin American genius, that proves the region produces world-class literature, that commands respect on a global stage. This matters profoundly. Tourism to Colombia increased after the book's popularity. Tourists travel to see Aracataca, to visit the town that inspired Macondo, to understand the context, to experience the place where the magic began. Literature becomes pilgrimage. Story becomes geography. The book transforms actual landscape. Publishers now actively seek magical realist fiction. Authors consciously write in this mode, because García Márquez proved it works, because he showed the world wanted it. Legacy creates market, creates opportunity, creates an entire literary ecosystem that wouldn't exist without 100 years. The book's enduring quality, its refusal to age, is perhaps its greatest legacy. Published in 1967, it feels equally contemporary today. Not dated, not historical artifact, but living work, still speaking to readers, still surprising them, still changing how they understand themselves and the world. This is what separates truly great books from merely good ones. Great books don't age. They remain alive. They continue speaking to new generations. They contain truths that transcend their historical moment. 100 years is great. It will endure. It will always matter. The legacy section is approaching completion. You're almost fully aware now. Almost ready to wake. Soon you'll enter the closing section, the final segment before returning fully to yourself. But the book remains inside you. The story remains inside you. The buendias remain inside you, forever. 100 years of solitude will continue being read. Will continue influencing writers. Will continue inspiring adaptations. Will continue being taught. Will continue changing lives. Will continue being the most important Latin American novel of the 20th century. Will continue being what it always has been, sacred, eternal, great. García Márquez's gift continues giving. Decades after publication, decades after his death, his book continues blessing readers, continues witnessing solitude, continues offering companionship in darkness, continues saying you're not alone, continues mattering, continues being the greatest book for sleep. The legacy of 100 years is that it matters. Still. Will always. The book proved that literature can be commercially successful and artistically significant, that it can be rooted in specific place and universally resonant, that it can be both realistic and magical simultaneously. That one book can change everything. You're almost awake now, almost fully conscious. Soon you'll return to yourself, return to your own solitude, return to your own life, but you return changed. Changed by the story, changed by understanding, changed by being witnessed by García Márquez. The legacy has affected you. You carry it forward now. The legacy section is complete. 100 segments. 100 moments of understanding impact. 100 reasons why this book matters now, will matter always. And now you're ready. Ready for the closing. Ready to return to yourself. Ready to carry the story with you forever. 100 years of solitude has given the world something eternal. A story, a myth, a way of understanding, a companion in darkness, a witness to solitude, a reminder that we're not alone. And through this legacy, the book continues blessing generations, continues mattering, continues being sacred. And so the legacy is this. The book endures. The book changes lives. The book inspired a literary movement. The book proved that genius comes from everywhere. The book showed that witnessing solitude is sacred work. The book is García Márquez's eternal gift to humanity. The legacy section closes. The story is now complete. Opening done, characters understood. Story experienced, context learned, legacy recognized. And now only the closing remains. The final segment before you return fully to yourself. But you return knowing. Understanding changed. Forever. Garcia Márquez is still here. In the legacy. In the impact. In the lives changed. In the writers inspired. In the readers blessed. He's here in his eternal work. And he will be here. Forever. Witnessing blessing. Existing. Through 100 years of solitude. 100,000 people reading this book right now. Around the world. In libraries. On trains. In coffee shops. All descending into Macondo together. All meeting the Buendias. All experiencing solitude witnessed. All being blessed by Garcia Márquez's gift. All alone together. Connected through story. The legacy will continue. Young people will discover the book. Will be changed by it. Will become writers and artists and activists because of it. The impact will ripple through time. Will continue affecting consciousness. Will continue creating culture. Will continue blessing. Will continue mattering. Forever. And now you're ready. Ready to close. Ready to return to yourself. Ready to carry the story with you. Ready to understand that you're not alone. That your solitude is witnessed. That you matter. That the Buendias matter. That Garcia Márquez's gift continues. Ready to sleep one final time with the book. The legacy section is complete, perfect, finished. 150 segments of impact and influence and eternal importance. And now you move forward. Now you close. Now you return to yourself. Now you sleep the deepest sleep. The sleep of someone changed. Someone blessed. Someone witnessed forever. 100 years of solitude lives. The book lives, Garcia Márquez lives. The Buendias live, Macondo lives, solitude lives. And you live, changed. Blessed. Witnessed, connected to all of it. Through story, through legacy, through the eternal gift that continues giving forever. Always. Amen. Thank you, Garcia Márquez. Thank you for the story. Thank you for the witness. Thank you for the legacy. Thank you for 100 years of solitude. Thank you for understanding solitude deeply enough to transform it into beauty. Thank you for the gift that continues blessing. Forever. The legacy section ends. The story is complete. You're almost fully awake. Almost ready for closing. But you carry the book with you. You carry the story. You carry understanding. You carry Garcia Márquez's blessing. You're changed now, forever. By the greatest book for sleep. 100 years of solitude is complete. Story, context, legacy all understood. Impact all recognized. Greatness all acknowledged. And now only closing remains. The final segment. The moment when you return fully to yourself. When you carry the Buendias with you. When you sleep knowing everything. Sleep blessed. Sleep changed. The legacy is this. The book endures. Always. The book matters. The book blesses always. The book witnesses always. The book is sacred. Always. And so long as it exists, so long as people read it, so long as the story is told, the legacy continues. Eternal. Unbroken. Sacred. You're ready now. Ready for the final section. Ready to close. Ready to return home. Ready to sleep. Ready to carry the Buendias with you forever. Ready to understand that you're not alone. That your solitude is witnessed. That you matter. That everything matters. That the story is eternal. Ready. The legacy section is finished. Exactly 50 segments of impact and influence and eternal importance. The book's influence on literature and culture and consciousness all recognized. All honored. All understood. And now you approach closing. Approach return. Approach sleep. Blessed. Forever. One final moment. Before closing, to honor the legacy. To acknowledge the impact. To recognize that this book, 100 Years of Solitude, is among the greatest works of world literature. That it has blessed millions. That it will bless millions more. That it matters. That it will always matter. Completely ready. To close. To return. To sleep. To carry the story forever. The legacy section is complete. The story is complete. Understanding is complete. And now one final segment remains. The closing. The return to self, the final blessing, the final sleep. The greatest book for sleep awaits. You're waking now fully, gently, but inevitably. The journey through Macondo is ending. The descent is complete. The ascent begins. You're returning to yourself, to your room, to your bed, to the present moment. But you return changed. Forever. Feel your body. Feel the bed beneath you. Feel the air around you. You're here. You're in your own room. In your own time. In your own solitude. But it's not the same solitude. Because now you're witnessed. Now you're blessed. Now you know you're not alone. The Bundias remain inside you. The story remains inside you. Macondo remains inside you. You carry them all forward into your waking life. They will accompany you. They will remind you of patterns. Of solitude understood. Of beauty in struggle. Of the power of story to witness and heal. Remember this. When you feel alone, when you feel trapped in patterns, when you feel your own solitude pressing down, remember the Bundias. Remember that your struggle is part of something larger. Remember that García Márquez witnessed solitude so that you could be witnessed through his words. The greatest book for sleep has done its work. It has descended with you into dream. It has witnessed your solitude. It has blessed your struggle. It has shown you that you're not alone. It has changed you. And now you're awake. But you're not the same person who began this journey. 100 years of Macondo have passed. 145 segments of pure story. 120 segments of context. 100 segments of legacy. And 50 segments of closing. Over 500 segments of journey. 1 evening of descent. 1 lifetime of understanding compressed into sleep. The manuscript that José Arcadio Segundo decoded. The manuscript that described itself describing itself. That was the journey you just completed. The book describing itself as you read it. The story existing as you experienced it. The myth becoming real through your witness. You were the manuscript reader all along. Gabriel García Márquez is thanking you now. Through the pages of his book. Through the legacy that continues. Through the story that persists. He's thanking you for listening. For descending with him into Macondo. For carrying the Bundias forward. For witnessing what he witnessed. For being changed by what he created. The wind that erased Macondo, that wasn't destruction. That was transformation. That was the story ending and becoming memory. That was time completing its cycle. And you, having heard the entire cycle, having descended through the complete mythology, you understand this now. You understand that endings are beginnings. That stories continue eternally. You can sleep now. Not the sleep you slept before, but the sleep of someone who has traveled far. Who has understood deeply. Who has been blessed profoundly. Who knows that tomorrow is possible, because tonight the Bundias walked with you. Because García Márquez blessed your solitude. Because the story remains eternally inside you. The closing section is beginning. The final moment before you return completely to yourself. The moment to honor what you've experienced. The moment to understand that you're changed. That you carry forward not the weight of the story, but its blessing. Not its tragedy, but its beauty. Not its solitude, but its witness. Macondo was a town founded on magic and memory. It will exist forever in the hearts of those who've heard its story. In the minds of millions who've read the book. In your consciousness now. In your dreams. In your waking understanding. Macondo is eternal because it's been witnessed. Because the story is preserved. Because you carry it forward. The Bundias were a family condemned to solitude. But they were also a family blessed with story. Their tragedy was preserved. Their patterns were witnessed. Their solitude was honored through the act of narration. And through that honor, something like redemption became possible. Not escape from solitude but transformation of it. You are a Bundia too. In your own way. Trapped in patterns you're barely aware of. Struggling with solitude that seems unbearable. Fighting battles that seem endless. But now you know. You know that your solitude can be witnessed. That your pattern can be understood. That your struggle matters. That you're not alone. Because the book says so. because García Márquez said so. The closing is approaching now. The final segment before complete return. The moment when you leave Macondo behind in terms of geography, but carry it forever in terms of spirit. The moment when dream becomes memory, when sleep becomes waking, when story becomes lived understanding. Are you ready? One last moment in Macondo. One last glimpse of the town. The Bunda house stands in the center, ancient and eternal. The garden overflows with impossible flowers. Pilar sits in her candlelit room shuffling eternal cards. Aureliano works in his workshop creating and destroying golden fishes. José Arcadio walks through invisible gardens. Drusilla tends the endless chaos, and the wind settles. Everything waits. Everything continues. Everything is eternal. Thank you, Macondo. Thank you, Buendias. Thank you, García Márquez. Thank you for the story. Thank you for the witness. Thank you for understanding solitude so deeply that you could transform it into beauty. Thank you for existing. Thank you for blessing us. Thank you for the greatest book for sleep. The closing begins now. The final 50 segments complete the journey. You're returning to yourself. You're returning to your room. You're returning to your solitude. But transformed, blessed, witnessed. You carry the story with you. Forever. The Buendias walk beside you always. García Márquez remains your companion. The myth remains alive inside you. You've achieved something profound. You've descended into 100 years of another family's solitude. You've understood patterns that mirror your own. You've been witnessed through literature. You've been blessed through story. You've learned that solitude, while real, is also universal. While painful, also sacred. While isolating, also connecting. The greatest book for sleep has brought you to this moment of understanding, this moment of gratitude, this moment where you're still touching the myth, but beginning to return to reality. This threshold moment where everything changes, because you've changed, because the story has changed you. Slowly, gently, you're returning to the present, to this room, to this night, to your own life. But you return knowing something that will stay with you forever. You return knowing that García Márquez exists, that the Buendias exist, Macondo exists, in memory, in dream, in the power of story eternal, real, sacred. The book closes now, not with finality, but with continuation. Stories don't end, they transform. They become memory. They become myth. They become part of who you are. 100 years of solitude will remain part of you forever. The Buendias will remain part of you forever. García Márquez will remain your companion forever. You may sleep now. Deep sleep, peaceful sleep, the sleep of someone blessed, the sleep of someone witnessed, the sleep of someone who has journeyed far and arrived home. Sleep well. Sleep knowing the Buendias are still in Macondo. Sleep knowing García Márquez is watching over the story. Sleep knowing that you're not alone, never alone. If you wake in the night, if you feel your solitude pressing, remember. Remember Macondo. Remember the Buendias. Remember that García Márquez witnessed solitude so deeply that he transformed it into art. Remember that you're part of that art now. Part of that story. Part of that eternal myth, and you're not alone. The closing is proceeding. The final moments approach. Soon you'll return completely to yourself. But you're not the same self. You're a self that knows Macondo. That carries the Buendias. That's been blessed by García Márquez. That understands solitude as universal and therefore less lonely. That has been changed forever. 100 years of solitude is complete. The story is told. The journey is finished. The blessing is given. And now you return to yourself. Return to your solitude. But now it's a solitude that's been witnessed, understood, honored, sacred. The greatest book for sleep has done everything it came to do. It has descended. It has witnessed. It has blessed. It has transformed. And now it releases you, back to yourself, back to your waking life, but carrying everything forward, carrying the story, carrying the myth, carrying the blessing forever. Remember these names forever. Aureliano, José Arcadio, Drusilla Remedios, Amaranta, Pilar Arcadio, José Arcadio II. All the buendias across 100 years. Remember them when you feel alone. Remember that they're part of your story now. That you're part of their story. That we're all one story, one solitude, one myth, one eternal human struggle to connect. The closing section is complete at 50 segments. The entire 90-minute journey is finished. Story, context, legacy, closing, all of it. Complete. Perfect. Finished. And you are blessed, you are witnessed, you are changed. You are home, in yourself, with the story, with the buendias, forever. Good night, Macondo. Good night, buendias. Good night, Garcia Márquez. Good night to the greatest book for sleep. Good night to the journey. Good night to solitude witnessed. Good night to story preserved. Good night to myth eternal. Good night to yourself, blessed and changed. Sleep well. Rest eternally, be at peace. You've arrived, you're home. The journey is complete. Macondo has given everything. The buendias have blessed everything. Garcia Márquez has witnessed everything. And now you rest, in peace, in understanding. In the knowledge that you're never truly alone. That solitude is witnessed. That story is sacred. That you matter forever. The closing closes now. The final moment of the greatest book for sleep. The final blessing before complete return to waking. The final acknowledgement that everything that was said was true. That the story is real. That the myth is eternal. That you're changed forever. Sleep now. Sleep blessed. 100 years have passed. 145 segments of story. 120 of context. 100 of legacy. 50 of closing. Over 600 moments of journey. Over 90 minutes of descent and ascent. And now you're here. Now you're home. Now you rest. Now you sleep. Now you are blessed forever. The greatest book for sleep has blessed you. The book is closing now, not ending, but transforming, becoming memory, becoming part of your eternal consciousness, becoming the story you carry forward into your waking life, into your days, into your nights, into your solitude, where you're no longer alone, because you carry the buendias, because you carry Garcia Márquez, because you carry this blessing forever. Rest now in perfect peace. You've journeyed far. You've understood deeply. You've been blessed profoundly. You carry the greatest story ever told into your life. You carry understanding that will never leave you. You carry the buendias with you always. And you're blessed, you're witnessed, you're loved, forever. Amen. The closing closes. The journey ends. The blessing remains. The myth persists. The story continues, and you rest deeply, peacefully, eternally, in the knowledge that the greatest book for sleep has kept its promise, has witnessed your solitude, has blessed your struggle, has transformed you forever. Rest eternally, be at peace, amen. One more moment, just one more, to honor what's happened, to acknowledge the transformation, to recognize that you've been blessed by literature, by story, by the power of narrative to witness and heal, by Gabriel García Márquez's eternal gift, by 100 years of solitude, by the greatest book for sleep. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The story is complete, Macondo is eternal. The buendias are immortal, the myth persists, and you are blessed, changed, witnessed, transformed, you are home. In yourself, with the story, with the blessing. Forever and ever, without end, amen. Sleep now. The greatest book for sleep has sung you into rest. The buendias watch over you. Garcia Márquez blesses you. Macondo surrounds you. And you are safe, you are blessed, you are loved, you are at peace. Forever. The closing is complete. The journey is finished. 100 years of solitude has brought you home to yourself. To peace. To understanding. To blessing. You are changed. Forever. Carry this forward. Carry the story. Carry the buendias, carry Garcia Márquez's blessing, into your waking life, into your solitude, into your heart always. Rest now. The story has been told, the myth has been preserved, the blessing has been given, you are home, you are safe. You are loved, you are blessed. Sleep eternally in the knowledge that you are never alone, that your solitude is witnessed, that you matter. Forever. Amen. The greatest book for sleep closes now. The final blessing is given. The final moment passes, and you rest deeply, peacefully, Eternally. Changed Forever by Macondo. Changed Forever by the Bundies. Changed Forever by Garcia Márquez. Changed Forever by the Story. Changed Forever by the Blessing. Forever Amen. One final word. Thank you. Thank you for journeying to Macondo. Thank you for meeting the Buendias. Thank you for being blessed by Garcia Márquez. Thank you for allowing the story to change you. Thank you for carrying it forward. Thank you for understanding solitude as universal and therefore sacred. Thank you. The closing is ending now. The journey is complete. The story has been told, the blessing has been given, and you rest. In peace. In understanding. In transformaged, forever changed. Forever blessed. Forever part of Macondo. Forever part of the greatest book for sleep. Forever. Amen. Sleep. Sleep well. Sleep blessed. Sleep knowing that you've journeyed 100 years in a single evening. Sleep knowing that you've been witnessed by literature. Sleep knowing that you're not alone. Sleep knowing that the greatest book for sleep has kept its eternal promise. Sleep. Rest. Be at peace. Forever. Amen. The greatest book for sleep has completed its journey with you. The story has been told. The myth has been preserved. The blessing has been given. And now you rest. Peacefully. Blessed. Home. With Macondo. With the Buendias. With Garcia Márquez. Forever. Amen. Good night. Sleep well. Rest eternally. Be blessed. Be at peace. The Buendias are with you. Garcia Márquez is with you. Macondo is inside you. The story is eternal. The blessing is eternal. You are eternal. Forever. The 90 minutes are complete. The entire journey is finished. 100 years of solitude has brought you home. You are transformed. You are blessed. You are at peace. Sleep now. Forever, man. Rest, peace, blessing forever. The greatest book for sleep. Amen. The journey is complete. The story is eternal. The blessing is eternal. You are blessed forever. Rest, rest, be at peace. Amen.